This
Bill, you're gonna
conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, Bill, you can unmute yourself when you're ready.
Good evening. It's the planning board meeting of May 27th, 2020. We'll take attendance. Mr. Warren, just wave. Mr. Dell, wave. Mr. McCrory, Mr. Sweeney, Mr. Andrews.
Mr. Mandel,
Missing
present.
anyone?
Mandel,
Mr.
I'm here.
Mandel, sorry, Mr. Mandel.
I'm here.
And Bruce Bond is here. Yep.
Okay, we have everyone here. Jane, I'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll open this meeting. The first agenda item this evening is BCH Realty LLC site plan.
But Bill, it's
Yes,
Don,
Randy.
Don Brennan, I'm the attorney for the client. I believe the engineer should be here too, Mr. Sparaco, and the owner. This is the, taking one of the buildings that's on Mountain View Avenue and,
Mr. Brenner?
yeah.
Mr. Brenner, if you can allow the chairman to introduce the project, and
Okay, sorry.
he'll
I
address
jumped
you
the
when he needs you to talk.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Slavin. As I said, BCH Realty, 20 Mountain View Ave, Orangeburg, New York. Go ahead, Mr. Brenner, please continue.
Okay, it's an existing building. It has a vacant store adjoining the restaurant. What the restaurant wants to do is expand it and use it for that purpose. In other words, and strictly based on that fact, we needed additional parking, and the engineer designed the parking for the operation.
Thank you, Mr. Brenner. Any other comments from your engineer or?
I don't see him, but I will cover for him.
No worries. We'll start off. First correspondence. Letter dated May 18th, 2020 from Jane Slavin. Ms. Slavin has 8 comments. Any comments, any issues with any of those comments, Mr. Brenner?
No issue.
Second letter we have is from the Department of Environmental Management and Engineering from Bruce Peters, March 23rd, 2020. Mr. Peters has 19 comments.
No issue. They've been worked out with the engineer.
Very good. Moving on with Brooker Engineering. May 27th, 2020 from Ken DeGennaro. Mr. DeGennaro has 4 project comments. I'll read his drainage review recommendation. The application has provided sufficient information to demonstrate that potential significant adverse impacts with respect to drainage can be mitigated by modifying the existing basin. Therefore, we recommend that BCH Realty site plan be approved for drainage subject to above project comments. Any issues, Mr. Brenner?
No problem.
Moving on, Rockland County Department of Planning, March 10th, 2020. I believe that is from Doug Schutz. Rockland County Department of Planning recommends the following modifications, and they have 6 issues. Any issues there?
Acceptable, no problem.
Rockland County Center for Environmental Health from Elizabeth Mello, March 16th, 2020. Ms. Mello has, this office has no objection to Orangetown Planning Board serving as lead agency for this project. Ms. Mello has 2 comments. Mosquito control and existing food permit.
No problem.
Rockland County Sewer Department, March 20th, 2020, from Joseph LaFiandra. Mr. LaFiandra has 2 comments. Rockland County Sewer District does not object to Planning Board serving as lead agency. 2, the Rockland County Sewer Department does not object to the plan as shown. This project does not affect any sanitary sewers within the district. We request no further correspondence for the site. I assume no issues there, Mr. Berner?
No problem.
From the Office of Bureau of Fire Prevention, from Michael Bettman, dated March 10th, 2020. Mr. Bettman has 1 comment. Location of the fire lanes will include all paved areas other than approved parking spaces shown on site plan and will be striped and signed per New York State Fire and Town Fire Code.
Will
Good
do.
with that, Mr. Bettman?
Yes, will do.
We also have correspondence from Rockland County Health Department, Rockland County Planning, Orangetown ZBA, consent that the Orangetown Planning Board be the lead agency. There is also correspondence from Rockland County Health. Somebody got a dog? Comments attached from Rockland County Health. No comments at this time from Rockland County Highway. No future correspondence from Suez Water. Orangetown ZBA has no comments at this time. That's all I had, Cheryl.
That's all I have to.
Okay, next I will open this up to the board members. Mr. Mendel?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several questions. On the southeast corner of the parking area in the rear, you show a no parking loading zone sign. The area is striped off. This seems to be an added area, and since we have going to have a definite increase in the vehicles coming around that way, and I think there should be some sort of landscape that southeast corner shield the neighbors from the headlights due to the additional rear parking. That's one comment I have, Mr. Brenner.
We're landscaping at the turn.
Yeah, that's at the turn, right, where it's marked on the thing, no parking loading zone. I'll shield the house on the other side there. And secondly, for expanding the grassy area or reducing the grassy areas we come along Mountain View Avenue, is there anything going to be going to have more headlights at a closer distance shining out onto the road? So what sort of landscaping are they going to be putting there to reduce the headlights onto Mountain View or?
Any area where the headlights are in conflict, we will have it landscaped, put up some kind of a low hedge or something like that, which will take care of the headlights.
Yeah, that's along Mountain View Road that I'd like to see that. That's my recommendation on that. And I see you saw it there to the plans, the oil water separators, the retaining wall, the location of the fire lanes. Okay, nothing further at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mendel. Mr. Sweeney, do you have any comments?
Just very quickly, I'm seeing that it's a existing non-conforming use. So we have to go to ZBA for the extension enlargement and also for the side yard. So I think once that's met, I have no other questions for this project.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Mr. McCrory, any comments, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I got a couple questions. It looks like there's an additional 72 spots added for this application. What's the purpose of adding so many parking spots?
I believe we're adding 43, if I'm not mistaken. And the reason is that this is a very successful operating restaurant. If you've ever been there, you'll see what I mean. And since he's going to be picking area and having worked customers, he needs the spaces.
All right, it's I went by there today. I've been there. It's a fine restaurant, but it's a small 7-storefront strip mall. And just to clarify where I got the 72, you have 51 spots existing, proposing 123 on your bulk table. So it looks like it's I'm reading it as an additional 72. Am I mistaken?
You may be correct. One of my documents said 43. Again, I know the engineer laid it out because of the excess traffic that the owner anticipates is going to have.
How many spots right now are used for that restaurant?
John, would you know that offhand? You can unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. John,
Okay, I'm using, as of now, I'm using 2, but the whole purpose of this is that I want to take over next door, which will make a 3 unit that I'll be using.
No, they know that. They want to know how many parking spots you have right now.
Many, about 45.
You have 45 and you're looking for an additional?
Oh, at least double it, because it's not just me. I cannot bring any other retail into the center because there's not enough parking spaces in here. And there's 8 stores.
All right.
Okay, Mr.
Seems like, I understand you're expanding the restaurant, but it just seems like 72 is a very excessive amount. And I'll read into just to point out James Slavin's letter number 2 that the front yard, you need a variance for the side yard. So I went by there today. You got the nice, beautiful front grass, and now you want to put parking spots right pretty much up to the road. And just a bad look. You know, you go there now, it's beautiful. You want to pull in, you want to go shopping there. You want to get rid of all that nice grass, which doesn't fit in with the rest of the neighborhood, and add parking spots to it. So that's I wish you could find another place for those spots. It just really takes away from the area and to that property, which right now is a nice piece of property with the front lawn there. So I have a problem with those front parking spots.
Mr. McCrory, if I can add that based on the calculations that the engineer provided, 110 parking spots are required with 123 proposed spots. So they only have 13 that are above what is actually required.
Yes, and I understand this is an odd lot. There's a lot of vacant space to the rear of that. I guess they're using all that vacant property in their calculations. Is that correct?
No, the calculations are based on the use and the square footage of the building. And that calculation is on the parking calculations on the first sheet. I don't know if the engineer is on the call. Perhaps he can explain it, but they break it down. It's on the left-hand side of the sheet.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It just seems very
right. So they get to
excessive
their total, right? But that's a zoning regulation requirement, and it's based on the square footage of the units and their use.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes.
Hey, this is Steve Sprocco. I am on the call. I am available here. There is 72 spaces or so increase on site. Please be aware that 25 of the spaces are in back of the building that are just striping up existing paved area. We had proposed 15 spaces behind the building, and then there's another 10 spaces parallel parking. So really the amount isn't as amount of pavement isn't as much as it would seem.
All right, yeah, so I think that's all I had for that comment. Just those front parking spots, right where the nice lawn is right now, just a bad look for that area. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McCord. Mr. Dell, any comments?
Yes, sir. I agree with the comments of the other board members. I'm glad the
Mr.
applicant
Dell?
successful business. Can you hear me clearly, sir?
Yes.
Okay. My main concern is that it's starting to approach, maybe has approached overdevelopment for this particular site. And hopefully, this will be the extent of the enlargements that are needed. Landscaping in particular, if anything can be done about putting in a small berm, some sort of plantings to mitigate the parking of the grass areas that are being removed. I think this is also scheduled to go to ACT, and I think they might have additional comments. I will reserve any comments until after members of the public, et cetera, have spoken, but other than that, good luck with the project. Thank you, sir.
Am I up or what?
Oh, wait,
Thank you,
one
Mr.
second,
Dell.
Mr. Andrews.
Mr. Andrews?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Mandel about the landscaping. I think if we do some landscaping in where the grass was along that area, that should more than compensate for the removal of the grass area, at least hiding some of that area from the roadway and the other neighbors. And I'm sure that Akabor, I think Jane has it going to Akabor. I'm sure they'll come up with some suggestions also. That's all I have.
There is
Thank you,
landscaping screen shown on drawing 3 of 5. And it does show a whole area along the roadway there with some
Oh,
screening.
yeah. Yeah, I see it now, Jane. Thank you.
Any other members from the board have any further questions?
Yeah, Bruce Bond. I don't have any issues with the additional parking. I mean, the shopping center has quite a few different storefront locations. There's not really enough parking there. They could go out, they could definitely park in the front. There's nothing across the street. There's another shopping center. There's an entrance to some church that's back behind the shopping center. And I guess there's another driveway that leads to some other commercial. So it's not impacting any residential. They put some landscaping in to block some of the headlights that's proposed. I don't see it being any problem at all.
Just for your information, the church will become a warehouse. The church has moved to Alpine and the property is sold for a future warehouse.
Okay, that's all I got. So.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if I may interject 1 second, I'm receiving
Okay.
some messages regarding future projects later on in the agenda. So everyone understands each project is heard and the chairman will open it up to public comment on that particular project. So if you can remain muted until the project you're concerned with open the public portion, we would appreciate that. Thank you. Bill, are you good?
I'm good. That was Mr. Bond. Mr. Warren, anything you have, sir? Good. I have no other questions.
maybe if Mr. Warren wants to communicate, he can use the texting if he wants to say anything.
Right. Or, Mr. Warren, if you want to call my cell phone, I can put you on speaker.
I guess we'll open up the public hearing.
If there's any members of the public that would like to be heard, please announce your name. And this is in reference to BCH Realty. Going once? Going twice? Mr. Chairman, I don't see anybody wanting to speak in reference to this project.
Mr. Sweeney,
we'll
I
close
make
the
a
public
motion to
portion.
close public forum. Make the motion.
Motion to
Sweeney.
close.
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Sweeney motions, Mr. Andrews second. Favor?
Thank you.
Yeah, aye.
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 None opposed? This is, they have variances, so they have to go to a ZBA, so that this is up for preliminary, correct?
That's correct.
So I make a
That is
motion for
correct.
lead agency.
Second.
Please say your name when you vote on, thanks, please.
Sweeney makes a motion for lead agency.
Mandel seconds.
Are we gonna open this up for preliminary?
No, you have to,
Lead agency first.
This is lead
Need to vote
agency.
on
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is up for lead agency.
They all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Andrews, aye.
Aye. Sweeney,
Mandel,
aye.
aye.
McCrory,
Young
aye.
eye. Warren, thumbs up from Warren. Okay, Secra?
I'm okay. Hey, Bill, am I voting
Oh,
tonight or
sorry,
not?
No,
No.
no.
No, I don't believe so.
No, okay, all right, no problem. Just want,
Appreciate your input, but we have a full board. So we're going to Secra. Who nominates Secra?
Motion for secret. Mandel.
Mandel, 2 seconds.
Mr. Young, I believe you're voting for a neg deck, or if someone can make a
Yeah.
resolution for.
Motion for neg deck Mandel.
2 seconds, neg deck.
I'll second Nandek Andrews.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sweeney, aye.
Mandel,
Young
aye.
eye.
Andrews, aye.
McCrory, aye.
Mr. Dell?
Mr. Dell?
Mr. Dell, are you in favor?
Aye. Yes. Aye.
Okay, all in favor, none opposed?
I make a motion for preliminary with conditions. Sweeney,
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Second?
oh, you gotta do the conditions.
Oh,
You have to read them.
conditions, yes. We've Ms. Slavin's letter with 8 comments. Mr. Peters' letter with 19 comments. Brooker Engineering, 4 comments. Rockland County Planning Board, 6 comments. Rockland County Health, 2 comments. Rockland County Sewer District, 2 comments. 1 comment from Michael Bettman of the Bureau of Fire Prevention. That should be it, right, Cheryl?
That's
Second,
correct.
Mandel. Mandel seconds.
Mandel seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
Three,
John.
aye.
Young, aye.
Aye, Andrews.
Mandel, aye.
Young,
Very
aye.
aye.
Okay, Mr. Brenner, you're good for preliminary.
Thank you.
Next item we have is PB 20-17 Lane Subdivision Plan, 125 Park Ave, Palisades. Who is representing Lane re-subdivision?
Hi, Stuart Stroh, engineer.
Mr. Strode, would you like to explain your project?
A brief introduction, yes. Good evening, everybody. Stuart Stroh here tonight on behalf of Centerpoint Engineering. I'm the engineer for the project. The project is a re-subdivision and I suppose also classified as a minor subdivision of 3 existing tax lots in order to merge them into a single lot. This would allow the construction of a new single-family residence. The total acreage of the 3 existing lots is 14,443 square feet. The property is in the R15 zoning district. The property is located on the east side of Park Avenue, approximately 200 feet south of Scotty Avenue. The parcel does include some wetlands area. Part of the proposal to build the home would include filling 1/10 of an acre of that wetland. And there was a letter submitted from our wetland consultant, Peter Torgerson, discussing the approval of the wetland, the proposed wetland fill. I would be glad to answer any further questions. I just want to give a brief introduction, and I appreciate the opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Stroh. I'll go through the letters. Please let me know if you have any comments or issues as I read through them. Do you have copies of the letters?
I do have copies, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. First letter, May 18th, 2020, from Jane Slavin. Mrs. Slavin has 4 comments.
We will address all of those comments, Mr. Chairman.
You're good with them?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask that the engineer just explain the nationwide permit. There have been some questions posed, and I think that might address some of the questions that might be asked by the public. So if he could explain the nationwide permit and what's required, that would be helpful at this time.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I will do so. There's a letter from our wetland consultant, Peter Torgerson. It's dated December 20th, 2019. Instead of reading the letter, I think it might be clearer to give a quick summary. The project was submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers on October 10th, 2019. As part of that submittal, we had proposed to fill 1/10 of an acre of the jurisdictional wetland under nationwide permit number 29 for residential development. According to the regulations from the Army Corps of Engineers, the applicant is permitted to undertake the proposed filling if they are notified in writing by the Army Corps of Engineers that the activity may proceed, or under another circumstance, if 45 days passes without receiving any other written notice from the Army Corps of Engineers. That was the case on this project. The 45 days elapsed, and therefore the applicant is approved to undertake the proposed filling of the 1/10 of an acre as was applied for in the permit application. The letter from Peter Torgerson explains that in a little greater detail than what I just gave you.
So you're taking the approval based on the 45 days has passed?
That's correct. So
There's
the
no other
dates- I'm sorry.
There's no other jurisdictional requirements? You're just taking the 45 days and going with it?
That is the guideline. And the letter from Pete Torgerson cites the exact the exact location in the Federal Register under which that is allowable. For the record, it's page 111194 in Federal Register, volume 72. That's in the letter from Pete Torgerson.
Mr. Chairman, if I can explain a little bit, the nationwide permit is a permit that is set up to make it simpler for very small projects to follow the regulations. If what they're proposing is following the regulations in the nationwide permit and they don't respond, that gives an approval, meaning they don't have any comments. They still have to perform the fill based on the regulations within the nationwide permit. They can't just do whatever they want. They still have to meet those regulations.
And there's no follow-up just to check with them? I mean, we've had, so that was dated December 20th. We're almost 6 months beyond that, and we still haven't checked with them. Just to, I understand the rules, and I'm going to go research it, but it seems a little too loose for my life. Go ahead, Mr. Strupp.
In the same letter, it notes that that this approval is valid for 2 calendar years.
Okay. Again, it's not to my liking, but we'll come back to that. Moving on, go to the Department of Environmental Management Engineering. Letter dated April 3rd, 2020, from Bruce Peters. Mr. Peters has 6 comments. Any issues with any of the comments, Shroud?
There's the one comment I would like to discuss, Mr. Chairman, is comment number 1. It's requiring soil borings and perk tests related to determination of groundwater. This application before you this evening is for the subdivision and the lot line, the lot merger. The comment suggests that the testing should be done prior to receiving final approval, and we think that it would be most appropriate to relate that to prior to a building permit and not prior to the lot line change.
Jane, I need some assistance on this.
Yeah, I might ask Cheryl to fill in on this too, but they are proposing a house on the lot. So it's a site plan development, and that's why the comments are put forward by Bruce. And that is a typical requirement.
But this is just a lot line merger. They came in with a site plan review, but we held that back until the property was merged.
So that's the confusion, because the drawing before you actually shows the house on it. So the planning board could require them to come back then for site plan development if this is just going to be the lot line merger approval.
Yes, Mr. Straugh.
If I may ask, this is a proposal to build a single family dwelling. Does that require a site plan approval or just a building permit?
No, that requires site plan approval.
Single family dwelling requires site plan approval?
In a critical environmental area like this, I would assume yes.
Not designated a critical environmental area as far as I'm aware.
Right. Technically, it's not.
Ms. Slavin, your interpretation is this, would this applicant be required to come back for site plan?
In this case, because it's before the planning board and there is a concern, I believe that it would be just that the planning board requests that.
But
If they have
only if the
concerns,
planning
we-
board makes that a condition, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, Mr. Straugh.
In that case, I might ask that this comment be required prior to site plan approval then instead of prior to lot line revision approval.
Assuming that's acceptable with our attorney and our engineer, director.
I would say if the board is going to make the applicant come back for a site plan, that's very appropriate to put that off for the site plan.
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you for that consideration.
What number
Move
was
on.
that on?
Number one, Cheryl.
Okay, great, thank you.
Right, Mr.
And
Straugh, number
otherwise-
one?
We're okay with all of the other comments in that letter, Mr. Chairman.
You're good with 2 through 6?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to Mazur's letter. Mazur letter dated May 20th from, just says from Mazur Consulting. I'm going to read this letter. Submission, I'm going to read the comments that they have. Please note that the review of this is of the existing and proposed drainage only, and such below is a list of comments with respect to the drainage design only. Number 1, the woods on the site are being assumed as the poor condition as it relates to the curve number. From available online aerial imagery, it appears that the woods are in good condition. Treating this area as poor results in overestimating the existing stormwater runoff at the design point. The drainage calculation should be revised to assume good condition, and evidence shall be provided that the existing wooded area is of poor condition. Or evidence shall be provided. The proposed drainage map in the drainage analysis is labeled as existing conditions. This should be revised for clarity purposes. Number 3, there are still a few discrepancies between the plot plan, construction details, and the drainage analysis. The elevation of the 6-inch wide weir on the outlet structure detail on both section detail and the check wall detail doesn't match the plot plan drainage analysis. B, the 6-inch wide weir and the 4-foot wide overflow weir are still being modeled as sharp crested rectangular weirs, but the check wall shown in the detail would act as a broad created rectangular weir. This discrepancy should be corrected. 3C, the underground piping detention system detail does not match the plot plan drainage analysis regarding pipe size and invert elevation. This detail shall be revised to match the plot plan drainage analysis. 3D, on the plot plan, the proposed structure in the driveway is labeled as a catch basin, but the detail provided is for a 2-foot by 2-foot yard inlet. Either structure is acceptable, but the plan and detail should match. Number 4, there are a few issues with the plot plan regarding adequate cover. The proposed 41 contour crosses over the subsurface detention system at the northwest corner of the system. There is a concern that the adequate cover is not provided over the corner of the system. Please revise as necessary. 4B, there is only approximately 0.63 feet of cover, approximately 8 inches, provided over the proposed 8-inch pipe at the location of the proposed catch basin. This pipe should be lowered, if possible, to allow for adequate cover. Number 5, the stabilized construction entrance is still located in front of the adjacent property driveway. It should be shifted to the south so that it is not directly in front of the adjacent property's driveway. Number 6, the standard Town of Orangetown stormwater maintenance agreement shall be executed by the owner with the Town of Orangetown prior to construction. Mazer closes. Please note that upon submission of revised documents, further stormwater review and comment may be provided. The above comments represent our professional opinion and judgment, but may not necessarily in all cases reflect the opinion of the planning board. Overall, the proposed stormwater management plan meets the intent of the regulations, and therefore we recommend lane re-subdivision lot merger be approved for drainage subject to the above project comments. I also have Peter Thorgensen's letter. Do we need to read that in? It was stated earlier by Mr. Stroh. Rockland County Sewer District Number 1 has 2 comments. They do not object to the planning board serving as lead agency, and they do not object to the plan as shown. Rockland County Department of Planning, 1 comment. We are returning the enclosed application for Park Avenue Combines, 125 Park Avenue, which appears before the planning board April 7th, because the parcel is outside of their jurisdiction. It's not within 500 feet of a county or state facility. New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, March 12, 2020. They have no objections, no issues with the waterways, protection of water, state species. It's from Christina Pesella. I have correspondence from Helena Power and Terry Fox of 152 Park Avenue, May 22nd, 2020. This is a long letter. Have you seen this letter, Mr. Stroh?
Yes, I have, Mr. Chairman.
Should we read this in, Rich?
As long as you refer to it, you don't have to read the whole letter. No.
Thank you. We have another letter from Shelley Lennox Smith, May 25th, 2020. Ms. Smith has 6 points. Another email from Terrence Fox, Tuesday, May 26th. Mr. Fox has 7 points. And he has another email a couple hours later with an eighth point. Letter dated May 26, 2020 from Doris and Eileen Berg. 6-page letter, Mr. Stroh.
I have that letter. I just received it earlier this evening, and I didn't get to read it in very close, very carefully yet, but I do have it.
Okay. We also have correspondence from Orangetown ZBA, consenting planning board being lead agency. Correspondence from Suez. No further correspondence. Rockland County Highway Department. Projects out of their jurisdiction. Orangetown ZBA. I believe that's all I had, Cheryl.
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Stroud, I'm going to open this up to my colleagues now. Mr. Mandel, would you like to kick us off?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mandel here. Several questions. Just want to clarify before we start, because some of the reports refer to the site plan, some of them just refer to the re-subdivision of the property. I just want to make sure we're talking about this application. Director Slayton, this application is approval for the re-subdivision only. There's no cutting of trees, there's no filling in of wetlands, there's no construction, and from my side of the thing, I'm looking that they must return for site plan approval before any action is taken. If we approve that, is that what we're saying?
That is my understanding from the previous discussion. If the board makes that a condition.
All right.
It was advertised only for re-subdivision.
Okay, I'm just reading the comments from some of the agencies involved, and there's some of them also on different things. Okay, have you, since we're talking about the site, to see if it's a buildable lot, have you, Mrs. Rao, have you contacted the Orangetown Highway Department and obtained their written permission for the non-standard driveway on Park Avenue?
We've not contacted them yet. As far as I know, I have not contacted them, and I don't believe the applicant has yet.
Okay, so we don't know if it's a lot that can be built upon. All right. As let me see. Okay, you say in a letter you wrote on April 20th, 2020, talking about the re-subdivision, you say that the construction entrance has been shifted to the south, but the plan that we have shows it's still there. But more so, on this plan for re-subdivision, and it's not on here now, but if we come back, in my opinion, I'd have to see exactly where you're filling in. It doesn't show me anywhere on the plan where we're filling in. So I'd like to see what area is going to be filled in. Also, I'm looking at the proposed site plan. We're talking about the cutting down of 45 trees, 17 trees that the proposed dwelling and driveway would knock down, an additional 28 trees. Before any trees that are cut down outside of a site plan, you need, in my opinion, you need an arborist to come in and take a look at those trees. But looking at them today, when I did my site inspection, a lot of those trees are quite healthy to me. Okay. Also, looking at your plan, there's a drainage panel, a drainage channel, bot bank that goes through the property. Is that driveway that you're proposing as part of your re-subdivision, is that going over that stream?
The plot plan that had been submitted shows the driveway going around that, what I think you're referring to, Mr. Mandel.
Okay,
going around the ditch.
Okay, because if it's going to cover the entrance to that ditch, you need that's a stream diversion, what I would see. But if I'm right on that
it's located to the east of the ditch. It avoids the ditch.
Okay. Okay. And just a couple of comments. As I'm looking at the decisions back from in the year 2000, I know there was an application made, and just a couple of comments going for just the re-subdivision today. But Mr. Beckley, in his letter dated December 2nd of 2000, he said Park Avenue, vicinity of Scotty, has been a subject of long-standing drainage problems, which are the alleged result of an improper construction of Park Avenue by the applicant on this project at that time. So it should be a factor. So I don't know if that roadway is still a problem or not. And even Laura Matusky Skelly Engineers made a statement that such a re-subdivision will have no impact on drainage until the development of the site. So I think when you come back again, if you're going to come back with a full site plan, I think all those things that I'm asking for, and that's up to the rest of the board too. But I think all those things should be done, from an arborist on the trees, why we're cutting down so many trees, to and right off the bat, I don't even know how we can approve a re-subdivision if we don't know if you actually have access to Park Avenue the way you're stating it here, since the Highway Department hasn't approved it. So that's my comments now. I'll reserve any future comments. I hear public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mendel. Mr. Sweeney, any comments?
Yes, thank you. My comments mirror some of the things that were said earlier and Mr. Mendel, but just a couple of small changes. I too agree that it's important to differentiate that right now we are just talking about the new subdivision, meaning to merge the 3 plots, because I think there's a lot of issues raised in these comments about the actual development and why we would need a site plan approval separate from this. I do recommend, to Mr. Stroud that if this does go through and you do come back for a site plan approval, there's a couple of things that have been said already, and also ones I want to add that you kind of really need to, consider. Definitely when I, look at the documentation from Mazer, when they say that the woods have been considered poor condition and they seem to think they're in good condition, I think you're going to really need some defined proof that it's poor, or deal with them being good in those calculations, because at the end of their comment, they say something that kind of stands out to me, that overall the proposed stormwater management plan meets the intent of the regulations. That's kind of a vague approval, kind of like what we're seeing looks like maybe it's okay, but we don't really know until we see more. So I'm going to want a much more definitive approval from the consultant before I'm willing to go to a site plan on this project when it comes back. Those are my comments now. I know there's some, comments here from the neighbors, and I'm sure some of them are on this call, so I'll wait till after they speak for any more comments this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Dell.
Yes, sir. Okay. I'm in complete agreement with what Mr. Sweeney said and also what Mr. Mandel said. First, as a point of clarification, Mr. Torgerson, who signed the papers, I believe his father was Robert Torgerson. He was a certified wetlands designator, and as such, he had official status. I don't know if Mr. Torgerson, Peter Torgerson, who signed anything, if his opinions carry any legal weight. I'm sure he's very knowledgeable, and I've seen him before, but I still question as to the validity of that in terms of the needs that we have. The site plan, yes, obviously, we got to take a look at that. The site plan as shown now seems to be a possible scenario given a number of assumptions. I would like to state it very clearly for the record that that would have no bearing and setting no limit whatsoever on what happens when assuming this is approved, that it would come back for us to site development. Or to put it very succinctly, the the applicant, if they wish to proceed without doing all the things required at this time or suggested by Mazer and other people, they do so at their own risk. And the board is not in any way responsible in case there seems to be issues. Mr. Sweeney's point about the woods being in poor condition, that's a very interesting one as to who does it. I don't know if it would be an arborist or a professional landscape architect. Ms. Slavin, do you have any opinions on that?
No, I do not.
Is there any way to find out who could do that?
I can look into it. I've never had someone question the validity of another design professional, so I'm not sure.
Mr. Dell, Mr. Andrews here.
That was all.
Mr. Dell, this is Mr. Andrews. I think an arborist would be able to take a look at the property and estimate the health of the trees and everything that are on the property. So probably an arborist would be the best bet.
It's more than just the trees, so that's why I can't offer an opinion to that at this point.
Right. Well, that's what I was saying. It's more than just the trees. So, Ms. Slavin, can you possibly do a little research to find that out for us?
I can do that. And again, I want to stress that we're looking at the subdivision and not the design of the house,
Yes.
the placement of the house or the drainage at this point.
Exactly. That's exactly what I said. But this could be a problem for future submissions, but also too, if we get to the point, assuming this gets approved and comes back to us, will we be receiving adequate and legal evidence as to the condition of the woods that we've been discussing? Thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Dell. Mr. Andrews, would you like to continue?
Yeah, just a question. This is an R15 zoning area, and what was this lot size after they're all combined? Can anybody answer that?
Mr. Stroud, go ahead.
The total area is 14,443 square feet.
So then you're going to have to go for a variance?
I believe there was a document from the ZBA that said that they did not require anything further, so I don't believe it needs a variance. I think that it's an improvement of an existing non-conforming condition, in fact, because it's combining 3 substandard lots into one substandard lot, but one substandard lot that is certainly much closer to the zoning than any of the individual of the 3.
Okay. I have nothing further until possibly after the public speaks.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Mr. McCrory.
Thank you, Chairman. Just I had a couple issues, mostly containing with the development, because that's kind of what we thought was going to happen tonight. So to separate that, let me renew my question. This was before the planning board about 20 years ago, looks like. Do you know why it was withdrawn? The application was withdrawn on 1/17, the year 2000. Anybody know why it was withdrawn? No?
I looked through the paperwork and I couldn't find anything. It just says the attorney withdrew the application.
All right, Donald Brenner was the attorney. Is he on here? No, he was earlier. All right, so the like many of the board members pointed out, definitely a problem with the site plan approval. The lot's not big enough to build on. And just a question about, I didn't have that question until you brought it up. The ZBA said you don't need a variance for building on a lot that's non-conforming. Is that correct? Yeah, Mr. Strong.
Yeah, I didn't say exactly that. I did say that there was a letter from the ZBA that said that they had no further, let me read it exactly so I don't misquote it, but it was part of the package. There was one where they did not object to the planning board being lead agency, but it says no future correspondence for this site should be sent to this agency.
That relates only to SECRA.
Further comment.
Yeah, that's a whole different story. That doesn't relieve you from going to the ZBA for a variance on the undersized lot. But just to get to that fact, just so we're on the record, you're taking 3 undersized lots and you want to form them into 1 undersized lot. That doesn't conform to zoning, correct?
It does not conform to zoning in respect to its area. It's about between 500 and 600 square feet short.
All right, it doesn't conform to zoning. Just wanted to state that, because that's a big issue with a lot of us. We usually don't approve plans that right off the bat don't conform with the zoning. And I noticed on your bulk table, you called it an existing non-conforming condition, which actually it's not existing. You're creating this condition and then seeking a variance, correct?
No, I'm not going to say correct to that statement. No, I don't think that's correct. This is considered a subdivision, but it's actually more accurately described as an unsubdivision. The lot area of the total parcel is not changing as a result of this action. And in fact, it's creating a more conforming single lot than any of the individual 3 lots. So I think usually when we think of a subdivision, we're dividing a large parcel into smaller parcels. And if we were dividing a larger parcel into a 14,400 square foot lot in the R15 zone, I think your statement would be correct, Mr. McCrory, but I don't believe that we are changing any. It exists as a 14,443 square foot in total, and that's what the single lot will be.
All right, I see. It seems like a stretch to call it existing when it doesn't exist currently. You're trying to make it exist. But
I think it's in my own way of thought, and you might be correct in not being accurate to call it an existing non-conforming condition. In my way of thought, this is being considered a subdivision, but I think you would probably agree that it's not what we typically think of when we think of a subdivision. It's a lot line revision. And in that respect, I'm thinking of the lot area that we have comprised of 3 lots, and we're making it a single lot. So in my mind, the lot area was not changing from the sum of the 3 to the single. So if the language is misleading, I would correct that, but I'm still not sure that it requires a variance. So there's probably a process for determination of that regard. But I think it's fair to say that we are improving a non-conforming condition with this request.
I agree. You're making it one big non-conforming lot. All right, just to move on to next question about the federal wetlands. The nationwide permit, I was trying to figure out myself what this involves. Was there any public input during the process?
No, I don't believe there was public input to the nationwide permit, and I should have.
Let me, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Stroh. I am the attorney for this board. There's been lots of discussion on this permit. It is a general permit. There was a public hearing. There has to be. It's contained in the regulation. So there was a federal public hearing. So everything's appropriate. I know it seems confusing and it seems like it's not right, but what happened was the Corps of Engineers decided that this level of what's happening is so trivial that they don't have the manpower to give special permits to each one of these issues. So general permit means throughout the United States, any project that meets the requirements that this project does, it's a relatively small project, It's an expedited way to give approval. And it seems strange to say, if you don't hear from us in 45 days, it's approved. But that's what it means. We don't got the time. If it was important to us, we'll definitely get back to you within 45 days. They didn't. It's approved for 2 years. So we really don't need to discuss that much. The federal government, or the Army Corps of Engineers at a federal level, spent a lot of time looking into this. And it's a general permit that applies throughout the United States in lots and lots and lots of cases like this. The Army Corps of Engineers just does not have the manpower to spend much time on every one of these thousands and thousands and thousands. So as far as it goes, I've looked into it. I think that the Army Corps of Engineers, this qualifies for the general permit. So one of your conditions will be Jane's, Ms. Slavin's condition that they satisfy the permit. And if it's not satisfied, or if within the 45 days they did communicate, we don't know about that, they're in violation. I think that covers this board, that covers the neighbors, that covers everyone, that they have to comply with the general permit. And if they're not complying, they're not going to have approval. And the approval can be revoked if we find out that the Army Corps disagrees with what's happening. But it appears to me that the general permit is valid and they have the approval for 2 years, as Mr. Stroh has stated. So I really don't think we need to keep going over that. It's one of Jane's conditions. You'll make it a condition. I think everything's been done appropriately from a legal standpoint.
All right, yeah, thank you, Rick. We just learned about this tonight, what the nationwide permit involves. So it involves no public input and nobody actually inspected the land. They just got the permit because 45 days passed and nothing happened. But where the federal government drops the ball, our town picks it up. According to the comprehensive plan for the town, wetlands and water bodies should be protected through local regulations that limit development, generally with the 100-foot buffer area adjacent to the wetlands and water bodies. That's in our town comprehensive plan. Also allows the planning board review under our code to also protect wetlands. If you look at 21.8.7 in the code B, section 8, natural and other significant features, all streams, ponds, wetlands, steep slopes, major trees, rock outcrops, and other elements of scenic, ecological, and historic value are preserved insofar as possible. So while the federal government might not care so much, the town code lets the planning board get involved and protect these wetlands that are involved in this development. That's all my comments. I took up some time, but thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McCroy. Mr. Bond.
I guess my biggest issue is whether they have access to the property from that road, whether it is going to be a buildable lot if they get the variance or do it. So we need to find that out, whether they have access to that street. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Mr. Warren. Thank you. All right, that's it for the board's comments. We'll now
Mr.
open this up.
Chairman? Yeah.
Yes, Mr.
Can I just clarify something? It's not whether or not they have the access. It's just the driveway they showed is like a Y-shaped driveway, and it's not a standard curb cut that highway would normally approve. It doesn't meet the regular specifications. This project was sent over to highway. They did not offer any comments. As part of the actual site plan development, when they come back, the driveway layout will have to be addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Slavin.
All right, so it's more the layout that what you're saying. So, okay.
All right, we will open this up to the public. All those that would like to make comment to this, we're going to give you 3 minutes to speak, and I will hold you to that 3 minutes. Having said that, does anyone like to speak to this project?
Yes, Power, I'd like to offer a very brief couple of questions. First of all, Richard, to Mr. Pakula, thank you for the clarification on the nationwide permit. The permit number was number 29. I spoke with Mr. Torgensen today. who was the gentleman who did the survey of the wetland. And he told me specifically that sometimes there is a public hearing and the Army Corps of Engineers in the Western District can decide that just as you correctly said, they're overworked and maybe they just decided to pass on it. Now, my question would be this: if you have this approval with no 45, how would someone know if they wanted to know more about this nationwide permit if an adjacent homeowner never knew that the permit was filed in December or November, excuse me? So the 45 days lapsed. There was no discussion. Today, Mr. Torgerson said that the Army Corps of Engineers in the Western District sometimes decides to waive it and pass it through. In this case, they did. Now, can you tell me why we never got any notice that this was coming up for anything? Do you know?
I can't speak for the Army Corps of Engineers, but
Okay.
as I said, it's a general permit that does not require specific hearings on every single application. That's why it's called a general permit.
I got it. My question really wasn't that. My question was, the 45 days lapsed with no further inquiry, with no notice to any member of the public. Would you know off the top of your head whether it's standard that nobody's notified that a request for a nationwide permit has been filed by a developer? Would you know?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I would imagine that's fairly standard, that there is no.
Thank you. Okay, so going back, with regard to the DEP letter on the soil borings, I'd like to reference I'm glad you're also discussing the prior lot line change first and separating it from the site plan. That's good. Item number, the item in the DEP letter under cultural resources references the fact that we have reviewed the statewide inventory, and it appears these records indicate that the project is located within an area considered to be sensitive with regard to archaeological resources. What effort has been made on the part of the developer to inform us as to what exactly that is and the responsibility of any developer to comply there? Do you know, Mr. Stroud, anything about that?
If the chairman wants me to address it, I will. So it's up to the chairman.
Yes, that last question, I mean, should have been addressed by the Department of Environmental Conservation. But yes, Mr. Stroud can answer that.
Or Mr. Chairman, if you prefer, I also wanted to go back and address some of the comments from the board members, if you would want me to do it all at once. Whatever you please, Mr. Chairman.
Let's get through the public portion first.
Thank you. I have a note to address it.
All right, Ms. Power, we're going to come back to that question at the end of this portion.
Okay.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this project?
Can I ask one more question, or are we moving on to somebody else?
Please make it quick, Mrs. Power.
Okay, all right. So the driveway, I want to point out that the Y-shaped driveway on an undersized lot is actually at the end of an undedicated town road. The road stops, and there is what I would call a seasonal stream, but what has been termed as a drainage ditch, whatever it is. So the road can't go south of the property to access it directly anyway. It would seem to me that there are a lot of reasons why this isn't necessarily a good or wise decision. And I've made my points clear in writing.
Yes, you have. And let me remind you, this is for the re-subdivision plan.
Right.
Should applicant want to come back and develop this plan, that is where you would have these questions addressed.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Mrs. Powell.
Thank
Any
you.
other- Any other questions for this project?
Hello. Yeah, my name is Jim Benny. I live at a property adjacent to this property. And it's my property that's being sold to Mr. Lane for this development. I built a house on my property next door at 135 Park 32 years ago. And we ran into the same issues, same problems 32 years ago. We had 2 lots here that we merged to 1 lot and was able to then, satisfy the requirements to build a house on the lot. And we had, major pushback from neighbors at the time, regarding they didn't want a house built, they didn't want trees taken down and all of that. But, I'm here 32 years, very happy here. It's a nice community. The drainage is an issue, but not catastrophe. My property doesn't get flooded. I think any improvements to that lot next door will improve the drainage in the area. If the guy properly grades it and the water is carried away properly, it'll be better, because right now it's just an undulating land. It's all different elevations in there. And there's pockets where water will sit for days till it evaporates or eventually sinks in the ground. I think this, putting a house there and grading it properly will be an asset. It'll be a benefit to the community, not a negative. So I just wanted to state that, for the record, because we're here, like I said, 32 years, and I'm living right next door to that lot, and we're not having an issue. I understand. I think, the neighbors, the trees is a big issue, because there's an industrial park on the other side, and you'll probably see some of the office buildings. But, everybody who built a house on Park Avenue took down trees. And, most people don't even have a lot of trees in front of their house. So, we all did this over the years, from 50 years ago till now, to me, 32 years ago till now. It's all, relative to what you're doing at what time. And, my wife and I, we plan on, when this project is done, put a line of trees. We're going to add a line of trees on the south side of my property, which would be the north side of this property, so that evergreen trees, so that it will be, more private. So that's our intent, and that's all I really needed to add to the situation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Oh, Simon, why.
Oh, as far as that, there was a question earlier about a project like 20 years ago that somebody applied to do something with this. There was a gentleman who lived behind me on Broad Avenue, and he was interested in that property. And he gave me a deposit for the property, and he researched it. And after about 2 or 3 months, he came back to me and wanted out of the deal because he said it was just too complicated. It was more than he could handle. And so that was the end of that. That's as far as I know on that issue. Okay, I just thought maybe I should address that since nobody had a comment. That's pretty much
Thank you
it.
for that clarification.
Yes.
That all, Mr. Benny?
All right, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make comments regarding this project? Hearing none, I'd like to close the public portion.
Mandel, motion to close public portion.
Mr. Mandel, Mr. Warren seconds.
Sweeney,
All in favor?
second. Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I had a couple of questions. I would ask the,
Yes, Mr. Mandel.
who, that street that we're talking about, that Park Avenue, who owns that property where we want to put the driveway? Is that town? Who owns it,
I own that property.
Park Avenue?
No, I own, 125 Park, the piece of land where the driveway is going into.
Private road.
It's a private road. It's a non-dedicated road. I live at the very end. It's a dead end right now.
So who owns that property where that driveway is going to be put on?
Part of it is just the road, town road.
Who owns the road?
Halfway, we own.
Yeah. Well, that's debatable. That's a major controversy in this area because even Scotty Avenue, which is not on my deed and I don't own it, but when you call the highway department, the building department, or anybody, they'll tell you it's half of it is your responsibility, even though it's not I'm not deeded that property. And it's like Scotty and Park are all private roads. And the town claims that we own to the middle of the road. So if that's the case, I don't know if it is, that would mean I own part of that.
So would that be considered a paper street?
Yes. Absolutely, especially Scotty, because it's not improved at all. Scotty Avenue is all trees, whereas Park Avenue is improved.
Does the town attorney have any comment on that? Clarify.
Well, I guess normally it would make sense to look into all this stuff with a re-subdivision because with building a residence, they would not have to come back for a site plan. But because of the complications that we've seen over the last 30, 40 minutes, and Mr. Mandel, some of the issues you just raised, I believe that the the planning board has stated that there's an intent to make a condition that they come back for site plan approval. I would say at that time, all that stuff is going to have to be addressed, and that's the more appropriate time. When you look at it, what's going to be approved today isn't going to change anything. It's just going to move the lot line. So there's one lot instead of three. That doesn't change drainage. That doesn't change anything. So it's not going to change anything for any of the neighbors. What's going to change things is when they come in and build the house. And then is the appropriate time because the applicant at that time, whoever it is, maybe the same applicant, maybe a different applicant, is very likely not going to submit exactly what's submitted for this. So I think what's important, if the board agrees with me, is to have some type of condition that the approval today is merely for the lot line change and not for any site, for the road. You're not giving any type of approval for the road that's on that map. You're not giving any approval for where the house is placed, and that for that stuff, the applicant at that time, when they want to develop the land, has to come back. And that way the planning board can take a good look at what's really going to be built, listen to the neighbors and make sure that drainage is appropriate, make sure that the road really does have public access, and all these questions that you're asking now. Since you're making them come back, that's probably the appropriate time to ask, because I don't know that the applicant's going to have all those answers right now. So I guess my comment is, as long as you protect yourself by saying that you're merely approving the re-subdivision aspect of this for the lot line change and not approving anything else, and then making it a specific requirement that when the land is to be developed, that at that point the applicant has to come back for planning board approval of the site plan. And at that point, it seems to me that there's probably going to be some ZBA activity. I think, if it's not within the code, they're going to have to go to the ZBA at that time too. But I'm making no comment at that. That's something to be addressed at the time the site plan is filed.
Thank you. And just one comment, Ms. Power, you would ask about the architectural. That's in the DEC letter under cultural resources. It states records indicate the project is located within an area considered to be sensitive. Yes. The project sponsor should submit project materials to New York State Historic Preservation Office online cultural resource information system to initiate the review process. Information on submitting to the system and access to it are available on the website, and that's one of the papers you should have. That was the DEC. It's a 3-page letter that should have the applicant should have received. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mandel. We closed the public portion, right?
Yes.
So we can move on to decision. Again, this is for re-subdivision, combining the 3 lots into one.
This is
up for
Sweeney. I
final
make a motion for the agency. I'm gonna talk at the same time. Make a motion for the agency.
Can I remind
Please
us,
say your name.
Vanessa Lappins, can I remind you guys that we were going to address comments at the end as a group, that Rich Crow was going to address them?
We did say that. Again, this is for the re-subdivision. Any questions that were pertaining to that, Mr. Stroud can address. If you'd like to address more than that, you're more than welcome.
It's with your decision, Mr. Chairman. I can be very brief if you'd like me to address those couple of comments that we did talk about. I wanted to state that there was a question about Pete Torgerson and his certification. He is certified at both the state and federal level. I would venture to say similar certifications to those that his father held. In regard to the letter from Mazer Consulting, I didn't get to comment, but I will address all of those questions, all of the comments that were raised in that letter. The first one in particular about the condition of the woods. I was at the site today to investigate that further, and I will address those comments to the complete satisfaction of Mazer Consulting. And on to the DEC letter. With the cultural resources, we will submit the project materials as requested and required there. I would state that from my previous experience, the reason they're talking about archaeological resources, they do not reveal the location of the archaeological resources to the public, basically for reasons of security. They don't want people going over investigating these sensitive areas themselves. So when a project is within a general area where they are known to have a resource, they request the submittal, and we will do that. I don't expect that it's going to come back that this is the site that has the resource, but it's a standard comment in this area because there are known archaeological resources, but we will submit it. And we probably will never find out what the exact resource is, however.
Thank you, Mr. Stroud.
All that I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Again, we're voting on the re-subdivision plan of this property. Mr. Sweeney, you were...
I was making a motion for lead agency.
2 seconds. Mr. Mandel, seconds. Mr. Warren?
He put his hand up.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Mr. Warren's in favor.
Aye.
Bell, Sweeney, Andrews, McCrory, Warren, Mendel. Okay. The agency, this is up for final as well?
Mr. Chairman?
It was advertised for all three levels. Yes,
Thank you, Cheryl.
preliminary or final.
Yes, Jane.
And yes, I'm sorry, I was answering yes, it was, and just to clarify that it's the re-subdivision and not the site development plan. Only the re-subdivision that you're making a motion on this evening.
Understood. Thank you. Neg deck?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mike McCrory. Just want to clarify with the condition, with this being just the lot line change, along with all the conditions, I believe we have to have a condition that no fill of the wetlands will take place, even with that permit, until site plan is before the board.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Include the cutting down of any trees along with Mr. McCrory's comment. Mr. Mandel.
I think we have
Also
to get
noted.
to the net deck first, don't we?
Yes.
If I can clarify my comment number 2, clearly states that no work is permitted. So all approvals
Yes.
are obtained.
You are correct. Okay. Mr. Sweeney, neg deck,
Motion for neg deck.
second. Warren,
Andrews, second.
Aye.
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 Okay.
McCrory opposed.
Mr. McCrory opposed. Okay. We will move on to final with conditions. Who nominates it for final?
I guess I'll do it. I'll make a motion for final with conditions.
Conditions, we have Mr. Slavin's letter, 4 comments. Bruce Peters' letter, 6 comments.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Tom Warren would like to make a comment clarifying that is the final of the lot line change only.
Yes, that's correct. Lot line only. The removal of 2 lot lines to make 1 large lot. We have the Mazer letter of May 20th with 6 comments. The Peter Torgerson letter, December 20th. Rockland County Sewer District with their 2 comments. We have Rockland County Department of Planning. New York State DEC letter, March 20th. And we have the correspondence from Mrs. Selena Power and Terry Fox. We have a letter from Shelley Smith. Another email from Mr. Fox.
Mr. Young,
2
I don't think you want to make those conditions.
Sorry, you're correct. Thank you.
Yeah, good, okay.
So we'll go back to the last correspondence was from DEC.
And I think you had discussed
Nothing
also
from-
making a condition that prior to any development of the land, that the applicant or the owner at the time must seek and obtain planning board approval for a site plan.
Agreed.
And that should satisfy Mr. McCrory's and Mr. Mandel's comments. No grading and no tree cutting.
And Rich, do we have to modify Bruce Peters number 1 because he wanted the board testing prior to final approval? And the applicant asked for prior to site plan approval.
Yes.
You're still muted. But
That's correct, Mr. Steen. You're right.
yeah.
Can I get a second on that?
I'll second it, Andrews.
Andrew seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Mandel,
Aye.
Sweeney, Andrews, Young, Dell. Opposed?
McCrory.
Mr. McCrory. I didn't see Mr. Warren. Okay. Mr. Stroud, you have final on the re-subdivision.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your effort, Ms. Slavin, Mr. Picola, Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl. Thank you for handling this under these circumstances. Really appreciate your effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stroud. Have a good night.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks.
Okay. Next agenda item up, we have the Orange Bank and Trust site plan and monument location. It's 374 South Middletown Road, Nanuet. Representing, we have Mr. Greenwell. Mr. Greenwell on?
Yes, I
I
am.
did see other.
Would you like to tell us about your project, Mr. Greenwell?
Yes, the number of people here representing this project, including the attorney for the buyer, or attorney for the bank, and the attorney for the landlord, Lael Realty. But I'd be happy to give a brief introduction unless one of the other gentlemen wants to jump in. Okay, this is the old Red Rooster property on the east side of 304. It's been vacant for quite a while. It's a little unkempt, and the Orange Bank and Trust wants to bring in a new local branch. The building will remain very little exterior changes with the exception of signage and new entranceways and so on. And there would be a drive-up ATM on the north side of the building with a canopy over it to protect those drivers from sticking their arm out to use the ATM in inclement weather. The building is about 1,480 square feet. The lot's about 33,900 square feet, not taking into consideration the road widening that would be gratuitously dedicated to the county. The approximately 50% of the property to the east would remain undeveloped. It's heavily wooded up to the residences in the back. The parcel was intended to utilize the existing macadam as is with some removal. We note some comments from the Department of Environmental Management regarding narrowing the entrance and exit, which we'll get into when those comments come up. There is a fairly substantial decrease proposed in the impervious area. There is a lot of gravel that's being removed, and then a lot of additional landscaping would be improve the aesthetics of the site in general. There would be, as I mentioned, improved landscaping. There would be a new lighting plan prepared, has been prepared, and repaving and restriping the entire parking lot and fixing up all the curbing with Belgian block. And with that being said, I would go right into the comments unless you have anything further.
I have nothing, Mr. Greenwell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go into the comments. A letter from Jane Slavin on May 19th, 2020. Mrs. Slavin has 5 comments. Any issues with any of those comments, Mr. Greenwell?
No, none.
From the Department of Environmental Management and Engineering, April 3rd of 2020, from Bruce Peters. Mr. Peters has 7 comments.
Yes, if I could, I'd like to go through several of those. We are reducing the site impervious area from 20,860 square feet. We're reducing it by 7,370 square feet, almost a 35% reduction. We had applied for planning board approval, and in that application, we had requested a waiver of drainage of the drainage escrow because of the significant decrease in the proposed impervious area on site. And, I've worked on a lot of projects. I don't know how to ask a drainage engineer to prepare drainage calculations for a net reduction of existing conditions. So I don't really understand, number one, what Bruce is asking for. Secondly, the drainage facilities, he indicates, should be installed at the driveway entrance and the exit, and connect the dry wells, connect the drainage facilities, which will be a trench drain, to dry wells at both ends, and recognizing that there's no drainage along North Middletown Road. North Middletown Road is a county road under county jurisdiction and not subject to any town maintenance. We would respectfully request that the county, in their letter, which is further correspondence down, did not indicate any desire or any requirement in connection with permitting to have any drainage improvements whatsoever. They did ask for the dedication, they asked for the sidewalk, which we will agree to. Again, we are making a significant reduction, and the county is the ultimate determining factor in what they need and what they want. We would respectfully request that we be allowed to work this out with Mr. Peters. I know you're going to probably make these conditions, and he's not here to discuss it with him, but we would like the latitude to review these conditions with Mr. Peters. And again, number 3, if in fact we were successful in convincing Mr. Peters that the significant reduction in impervious area, particularly with the number 4, reduction in the 20-foot width of the entrance and the exit pavement, would also result in a further diminishing of the impervious area on site, even further making that probably somewhere up a 40% reduction of the impervious area. To take what's an existing condition and make it so much better by removing the impervious area, and then have to be the belt and suspenders of putting in additional drainage at great expense. We'd like the latitude to discuss that with Mr. Peters. As far as items 4, 5, 6, and 7, we have no issue with. Realized after Mr. Peters made the comment that a 30-foot wide pavement is not necessary. We do want the 2 lanes, particularly on the way out, so that the drive up doesn't block exiting traffic from getting to North Middletown Road alongside of another car that might be parked using the 18M. So, Mr. Chairman, we would like the latitude to be able to review these comments to satisfy Mr. Peters.
You realize you won't get final tonight with, well, I don't know about that.
We have to go to the architecture
We have to
review
go to
board.
Z. Yeah,
And
we
the
have to go to ZBA also for the sign.
That's true.
That's Mr. Quinn speak.
How's everybody? Good to see everybody.
Hello, Mr. Quinn. Jane, I don't have a problem with him going to talk to Bruce about this, with the caveat that if Bruce says you need to provide the drainage, you need to the trenches at number 2, and then the perk tests. If Bruce says you got to do it, Jay, you're going to have to do that.
I hear you. I'd like the opportunity to try to convince Mr. Bruce Peters that we really are going a long way towards making this condition much better than it is. And again, it's a county road. If the county, there's nowhere to put the overflow in. So if the dry wells end up getting filled up and overflowing onto the road, it's not going to help anything. But you know, we'll take the conditions under advisement, and we will respectfully request that we be allowed to discuss this with Mr. Peters.
Does anybody have an issue with that? Hearing none, I'll move on. Rockland County Planning from Doug Schutz, March 9th, 2020. Rockland County Planning has 6 comments, Mr. Greenwell.
No objection. We'll take a look at item 5, which is about the lighting plan. The architect had prepared that. We'll take a look at that and revise those lighting plans so that there's no spillover.
Very good. Rockland County Highway, March 9th, 2020. Highway's got 5 comments.
No objection. I note that item 2 indicates they wanted a gratuitous dedication, which we already showed and agreed to. And significantly absent in these comments, which would normally be there if they had a concern, was any discussion of receiving a drainage report, reviewing a drainage report, and having no net increase in runoff onto the county highway. They're recognizing in the absence of that, that we are making the situation better by a significant reduction in impervious area on site.
Understood. Rockland County Sewer District number 1, March 31st, 2020. Joseph LaFiandra has got 2 comments. Standard comments, Orangetown Planning Board serving as lead agency, and they do not object to the plan. A letter from the town of Clarkstown from Gilbert Heim, March 16th, 2020. Brief discussion. The planning board of the town of Clarkstown deemed the matter for local determination. So they're leaving it with us. We have correspondence from Rockland County Planning, consenting town of Orangetown being Rockland County Highway, same. Rockland County Highway, comments attached. Suez, no further correspondence. I believe that's all I had, Cheryl.
That's it.
Thank you. Gentlemen, Mr. Mendel, would you have any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think it's a great project. The landscaping looks great and everything. I have no problems with what Mr. Greenwald brought up about talking to DEME about those conditions. He's still going to have to come back. I mean, he's going to Akabor. He's going to the ZBA. He can discuss those conditions with Bruce Peters. And if Peters decides to amend them, we'll have it when he comes back for the final on this. That's all I have to say at this time. Thank you.
I agree with you, Ms. Mendel. Thank you. Mr. Sweeney.
I agree. I think all the comments are covered with the reports of the consultant. So I have no comments.
Mr. McCrory.
Thank you, Chairman. Just, it's nice to see a plan that improves the area and takes into account the neighbors to the east. So I got no issues with this. It's a good plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dell.
Yes, sir. I agree with what's been said. I'm just leery of the situation with Mr. Peters not quite being on board, or let's say that the two gentlemen not being in agreement. I wonder if we should just put in Mr. Peters' letter as is, and then let Mr. Greenwell work it out, or perhaps even a continuation. I don't want to delay the project, but I think we're going down a slippery slope if we assume that accommodations will be made, even though in this case they seem perfectly reasonable to me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Dell. Mr. Andrews.
I think the improvement that they're going to make to the property is very beneficial to the community, and I have no other further comments at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Mr. Bond, any comments?
No, I think it's a great project, so I have no issues with it.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Mr. Warren? You're good. Thank you, Mr. Warren. I have no comments. I think it's a good project as well. All right, we will open this up to the public. Would anyone like to speak to this project? Going once, twice. Hearing none, I'd like to close the public portion.
Motion to close public portion, Mr. Mandel.
Mr. Mandel, Mr. Sweeney, second.
Sweeney, seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
McCrory.
Okay. So we will go to preliminary on this, since he's got to go to,
This is Sweeney. I make a motion
Yeah,
for, we're gonna do,
Lead agency?
preliminary with conditions. Lead agency first, lead agency, that's fine. I'll make a motion, lead agency.
Mandel second.
2 seconds. Mandel
Mandel.
seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. McCrory.
Aye.
Motion for neg deck, Mandel.
Second.
Andrews
McCrory.
seconds.
Mr. Andrews seconds, all in favor? Aye.
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 Would like to make the motion for preliminary.
Motion for preliminary with conditions, Mandel.
Okay, preliminary, we have Ms. Slavin's letter with 5 comments. We have Mr. Peters' 7 comments. The applicant is going to talk to Mr. Peters about comments 1, 2, and 3. Correct, Mr. Greenwell? Thank you. We have Rockland County Planning with their 6 comments, I'm sorry. Rockland County Highway has 5 comments. Rockland County Sewer District number 1, 2 comments. Town of Clarkstown letter from March 16th. So, Cheryl?
That's it.
Second by Sweeney.
Second by Sweeney, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, Young.
Aye.
Aye.
Sweeney.
McCrory.
Andrews, Rory, Mandel.
No, aye.
Andrews. Aye.
Mr. Warren? Thank you. All right, Mr. Greenwell?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
Work is
all.
down approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks all. Take care.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on.
Bill, I want to make sure
Yes,
that
go.
I sent 3 more emails from, that I just received from the public. I sent them by email to all of you. So it should be included in the record.
I see 2 emails at 6:56 and another one sent at 7:32.
Yes. I sent them to the applicants
One
as
from-
well.
Timothy Takala. Another one from Cheryl McNeil. And a third from Carolyn Hill.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. All right. PB 20-19, Onyx Management, Amazon Delivery Center plans. Who do we have representing Onyx Management, Amazon?
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, who am I speaking to?
This is Daniel Patrick, the attorney for Amazon from the law firm Cuddy and Fader in White Plains. I'm here tonight with Jeff Desort of CESO, our engineer, as well as Tarun Sankhya of Amazon. And I'd be happy to introduce the project, or if Chairman would rather.
Tell us what you're going to do there, Mr. Patrick.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Amazon proposes to occupy and use the property at 200-400 Orangetown Drive. It is located within the Bradley Corporate Park. Amazon recently, earlier this year, received approvals from the Zoning Board of Appeals to operate and use their delivery station at that facility, which has been operating as a warehouse and other delivery services for quite some time now. Amazon is not operating or occupying at the time, but they're in the process of getting all their necessary permits for occupancy and for the use. A few of those permits include approval from this board for an existing or for the proposed canopy, as well as some grading at the property. Essentially, what the operations look like is packages come to the facility by truck. They get sorted at 400 Ortani. They're loaded onto smaller delivery vans to be shipped directly to customers' homes. This operation, this use has been approved by the zoning board. The zoning board approved the performance center review for the operation and the use and the occupancy. Included with that review was a review of the traffic and the noise and all the other impacts. So in association with that use, what we're here for tonight is approvals for a few items necessary for Amazon's operation. As I indicated, Amazon's proposing a canopy in between the two buildings, between 200 and 400 Ortani. So the vans can pull underneath the canopy, be loaded up with the packages, and drive directly to customers' homes. In addition, they're also proposing some grading around the site, which I will allow Jeff DeZort to go over in more detail shortly, but essentially they're providing more connectivity and more efficient circulation between the two buildings. So they're adding a little driveway to connect the two, so the vans for delivery can pull around underneath the proposed canopy and be loaded. Like I said, this property is located within the Bradley Corporate Park. The two structures that are being used for the operation use currently exist. The only thing that we're proposing is this new canopy associated with the use. We believe because of the commercial and the industrial nature of the area, the proposed improvement as well as the proposed use will be harmonious with the community and with the area. Will not present any negative impacts at or around the site. I understand there's been a few comments regarding traffic and traffic concerns. As I indicated earlier, the landlord submitted an application for performance center review to the Zoning Board of Appeals late last year, which was reviewed earlier this year. That application reviewed the traffic, and I included with your packets a copy of the traffic analysis that was provided, which concludes that there will be no significant increase or impact to the surrounding traffic. Specifically, I know there's been some comments regarding access using Western Highway. I want to clarify that Amazon is not proposing for their operation to use Western Highway for their truck deliveries, for their employees to come to the site, for the van deliveries, anything like that. The only use that Western Highway is currently being used for, that will continue to be used for, is for emergency access to the site in order to allow the site to be accessed in case there is, the other entrance is blocked. So we're not proposing to use that roadway for the delivery and for the operations. As I indicated, the improvements are rather, they're necessary for Amazon's operations. But as far as the condition of the area and the canopy and the proposed grading, we believe do not propose any significant impact or any significant concerns. I will simply close and turn it over to Jeff and let him go through some more detail. I don't know if you guys would like him to share his screen or if you guys have the plans in front of you, but we have received a number of comment letters, which I understand this board will go through shortly. We have no significant issues with them. We believe most of those comments are technical in nature. We're happy to respond to any questions and address any concerns or questions of the board and of the public if any such arise. And as indicated on the notices and in the letter we submitted dated May 13th, we are seeking preliminary and final approval this evening. Amazon is very eager to get into to the site and begin working. They have a few building permit applications in right now for related work in interior and for exterior facade work, but this proposed grading work and this proposed canopy is, like I said, essential to their operation. So they're really hoping to get moving as quickly as possible. So, unless you guys have any questions or comments for me at this time, I will happily turn over to Jeff Desort of CESO to go over the plans and the proposal in more detail.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate everyone's time to hear our proposed project. Again, my name is Jeffrey Desort. I'm with CESO. Let me see if I have the ability here. I can try to share a screen. Okay. Are you able to see my screen now? Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes.
To go into a little bit more detail of the operation and what we're proposing to do, the area, I'll kind of highlight some because I have the ability here with the share screen. So this building is 400 Ortani Drive, 200 Ortani Drive is proposed, or the existing building is right here. Traffic for associates, vans, and trucks would enter in off of Ortani Drive and disseminate between the two properties or the two addresses. Associate parking and van parking would be utilized on the 200 Ortani property that is already an existing paved parking lot. It's a fenced off area. Only minor restriping is proposed in that area. Vans, as they would enter into the site, they would be parked in their van stall. As the deliveries are scheduled, vans would queue up in what we call as a staging area, and then we have proposed a connected driveway between the 200 and 400 building where they would go underneath the loading canopy. As Mr. Patrick had mentioned, underneath that loading canopy is where the vans would be loaded by the associates. Baker's racks would come out. They have Baker's racks with packages. Those would be wheeled outside. Vans would be loaded. From there, the vans would then leave through Ortani back out to the street. As mentioned by Mr. Patrick, the access that's along Western Drive is not to be utilized. That is for emergency access only. It's what it is currently, and that's what we're keeping it as. From a grading perspective, the limits, see if I should be able to pull it up here. The limits of disturbance are fairly minor in nature, and it's really contained in the area between the two buildings here. So all of the existing grades are shown in the grade area. Proposed grading is occurring there's one area or limits of disturbance here. And then the other is focused right around where the associates would enter. And this is just minor parking regrading and some sidewalk. As part of our grading and our proposal, we are including a new infiltration basin. The stormwater that's associated with the area that I have highlighted in green would drain to an infiltration basin, which was then designed, and then that infiltration basin discharges, located here, discharge point into an existing detention pond. So all that stormwater for water quality, water quantity is basically being cut off in line detained and then released back to the existing pond. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone on the board might have.
Thank you, Mr. Zort. Gentlemen, we're gonna read through the comments and the letters we have. Then the board members will ask you some questions. Again, this is Onyx Management, Amazon Delivery Center plans, 200 and 400 Ortani Drive. We have a letter from Cuddy and Fetter. I guess it's a project description. A letter from Jane Slavin, May 22nd, 2020. Mrs. Slavin has 7 comments. Any issues with any of the comments, Mr. Patrick?
No issue with the comments. We would like to indicate that we are looking at alternatives for possibly enclosing the structure, but we are, we understand that if we cannot enclose it to Director Slavin's requirements, then we will seek the required variance relief.
So it's a canopy right now?
Correct, yes.
Thank you. From the Department of Environmental Management and Engineering, from Bruce Peters. Mr. Peters has many comments on page 1. He has 16 total comments.
No issue with those comments. I'll ask Jeff to confirm that, engineer. Jeff, we're good with the SWIP comments from Environmental Management Engineering?
Yeah, that's correct. Most of those comments are mostly technical in nature.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. From Brooker Engineering, dated May 26, 2020, from Ken DeGennaro. Mr. DeGennaro has 10 project comments. His overall recommendation is as followed. The proposed action has provided sufficient drainage information that demonstrates the potential significant adverse impacts with respect to drainage can be mitigated. Therefore, we recommend that the DXY4 delivery station site plan be approved for drainage, subject to the above project comments. I assume no problems with that?
Correct.
From the Rockland County Department of Planning, recommends the following modifications. They have 8 comments. Any issues with that, gentlemen?
No issues.
Rockland County Drainage Agency.
Dated May
They're
7th,
saying
correct?
that's not their jurisdiction, so it's with us. No issues with them from
No issues.
Vincent Altieri, May 7th. Rockland County Sewer Department, Sewer District number 1. They have 2 comments. They don't object to the Orangetown Planning Board serving as lead agency, and they do not object to the plan as shown. That is from
No issues.
May 26th from Joseph LaFiandra. Thank you. From Michael Bettman, Chief Fire Inspector, May 22nd, 2020. In regards to the proposed canopy on the north side of Building 400, that side of the building is an emergency access for the fire department in the event of a train being stopped or stuck across the east entrance. This would require an amendment to the site plan and a new plan for emergency access. Also, the canopy attached to the building and covering 24 vehicles would require fire protection. In addition, the canopy is too close to the side yard.
I would like to clarify that we did reach out to Fire Inspector Bettman regarding the access, and we provided him an alternative design, preliminary, just to see if he would approve or consent. Initially he said okay, but he came back later on this afternoon and indicated that he might have a suggestion for alternative route. So we are in communication with him, and we will certainly ensure that any access meets his as well as the fire chief's standards and requirements. I spoke with Director Slavin regarding the canopy being too close to the side yard. I don't believe that requires a variance. We are submitting revised plans in accordance with her comments, which will show the lot lines and indicate that the canopy is not very close to the lot lines. And I will ask Jeff to confirm, but I don't see any issue with the fire protection or for the canopy. I don't know if he's...
Okay. So you're working with Mr. Bettman?
Yes.
Yes.
That's true, Mr. Chairman. I have been CC'd in those emails.
Okay. So it sounds like you guys will come together and with some sort of modifications. Okay. Moving on, we'll go to an email from Isella from New York State DEC. Doesn't appear to be any issues from their viewpoint. Wetlands, waters, no species, no bats. A letter from, pardon?
Sorry, I was going to indicate that we did submit earlier today the no impact letter from SHPO indicating that they reviewed the project and have determined that there's no impact to any historic properties or resources.
Thank you. From New York State Parks, Recreation, Historic Preservation, May 12th, 2020, from Daniel McKay. Thank you for the opportunity. Okay, they have no issues. We have correspondence from Rockland County Highway, consenting to Orangetown Planning Board to serve as lead agency. Rockland County Highway, no comments at this time. We have correspondence this evening. It's a email from Carolyn Hill. I'll read it out today. Please no more traffic on Western Highway. It has been explained. Currently, there is no Orangetown Police Traffic Unit to manage the traffic we currently have on Western Highway. Western Highway is a protected county rural road not intended for commercial use. Our fear is that a lot of smaller delivery vans will add tremendous traffic volume to an already super busy residential road. The county says no trucks on Western Highway, but we know law enforcement, we know enforcement of the rules is the main challenge right now. Please no more traffic on Western Highway. Carolyn Hill, 849 West Highway, Blauvelt, New York. We have another email. Bear with me 1 second. From Cheryl Neal. Hello, I own my home on 56 Old Western Highway. I'm concerned about Amazon plans near the end of Western Highway. I'm a volunteer with the Turtles of Western Highway, a division of the Humane Society. The area directly in front of the proposed Amazon site on Western Highway is extremely sensitive environmentally. The traffic is already too heavy in the area. In May and June, we have to flag drivers down to get them to slow down, or the nesting turtles will be killed on the road. These turtles are essential for maintaining a clean water supply to the reservoirs. Do you know that? I'm not opposed to the site, but I want to ensure that neither trucks nor vans will traverse Western Highway. The paperwork says that they can use it in an emergency. What constitutes an emergency? I hope the standard is strict. I appreciate a reply, and given how much Amazon is making, they should contribute to the turtle preservation. Thank you, Cheryl McNeil. I have another letter this evening from Timothy Takala, 9 Piper Court, Blauvelt, New York. Hi, Miss Cooper Smith. I'm a new resident of Blauvelt at 5 Piper. It was only brought to my attention today that Amazon intends to expand their distribution activities and facilities in a project on 200-400 Orangetown Drive. As this facility is very close to my residence, I expect that something might be sent to me directly related to this a major project. I now have the development package from my neighbor. I have 2 concerns. 1, on the short environmental assessment from page 2, question 8A asks, will the proposed action result in a substantial increase in traffic above present levels? I don't agree with their answer of no. How could the expansion of distribution help not increase traffic substantially above current levels? Isn't that the reason for the increase in the facility capacity to send more out and more often? I completely disagree with this answer. Number 2, Amazon has made it very public that there are trailing down delivery systems. How can I, as a homeowner, have reassurances that in the coming years that this facility will now use this method and cover the skies above my quiet home with drone track? Please represent my concerns at today's meeting, as I can't find a link to join virtually. Cheers, Timothy Takala, 5 Piper. Believe that's all we had, Cheryl?
Yes, that's all we've had. Yes, that's it.
Thank you, Cheryl. All right, gentlemen, I'm going to open it up to my colleagues.
Can I make a comment?
I'm sorry?
Am I allowed to make a comment? I live at 835 Western Highway.
When I open it up to the public, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Mr. Mendel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Items. First of all, the location was not posted. I wrote around the location, front, back, sides, through the middle where the canopy is going to be. Route 303, the only signs that were posted out there were 3 in the rear of the buildings, and that was for the June ACA board meeting. There was no posting at all. I even went over to Sergeant Demiola Drive, looked at the property is from the back to tree line, and there were no postings there. So there were none at all that I could see anywhere on the location. I don't know what happened, but there is no postings. Just a couple of questions. Regarding the access to Western Highway, now that would be a really great shortcut if I'm a delivery driver to cut off a lot of my time. What steps will you take to ensure that the employees, the vans, and anybody else does not leave your premises to go out to Western Highway? You could answer that question?
If I may, currently there's a gate there, and we are not proposing to remove the gate. So we're not proposing any access through that area, except for emergency access, of course.
Okay, so you're going to have the fire, police, ambulance will have a key or something that'll be able to open that gate or whatever?
Jeff, do you know if there's a Knox box or anything there, or is it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there is a Knox box or not. If that's something that is required, we can certainly have that installed if one is not currently there.
Mr. Mandel, it's my understanding.
Fire departments, okay.
Yeah. Mr. Mandel, it's my understanding that that has always been the dedicated use of that road, and there is a gate that is there, and you can always make a condition that. Andy, I got to keep you muted. You can make that a condition to make sure that that is followed.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if you just note that down, make one of our conditions. A second thing that I'm asking you about, I'm looking at the landscaping, and I know as part of your approval at the ZBA Exhibit E, page 5 of 7, number 8, inadequate as shown. It shows south plantings, but the west needs to be, what type of plantings are going to be used along the western side? The landscape plan submitted does not show the type of plants, the size of the plants, the number as you go along. And the row that you show in your picture of plantings between the residential area and your facility, in quite a few of the spaces, it's only one tree. Having walked through where there were missing trees to the other side, I can see this a single row of trees. I think additional trees have to be added. And I think we need a full landscaping plan along there that shows us what type of plantings are there now and what's going to be added in order to reduce the noise and whatever else to the residents of that area. That's something that I would ask the board to consider when we make our recommendations in consideration. Third thing is, there's also another location. It's in as you go around the turn where there's no vegetation at all as far as blockage for the housing. Let's see. Another question with the traffic flow. I noticed around the back of the buildings, that would be, I guess, the west side. Looking properly at the diagrams, I think it's, let me see. Bear with me one moment, please. Yeah, we'll be on the west side of the buildings where I said there are homes where the vegetation is missing or where additional that I recommend should be added. As you go further along north along that road, and there's that turn right around the place where you're going to put the canopy in area. It's they need some sort of tree line there. There's nothing there at this point in time. And as you go along that road, it's a two-way road in both directions. Is there any possible way of making them a one-way road to reduce the amount of traffic that will be going along, if possible? I'm just asking, is it a possibility to make that a one-way so that it will reduce the number of vehicles passing between your facility and the residential properties? That's all I have at this time. Depending on what anybody has to say or ask, I reserve the right to ask questions again. If you could answer me at this point on any of those questions, I would appreciate it. Unless we're waiting to the end, Mr. Chairman, it's up to you. Thank you.
Would you care to comment, Mr. Patrick?
Sure. Yeah, I think I can address a handful of those comments. So as far as the site circulation and the width of the driveway, I don't know if it's possible to reduce that. I know that's the area that we're proposing to use as the alternative emergency access to get around 400. If I'm thinking of the correct area, and it's the shaded or the parking spaces that are, I guess, perpendicular to that lot line with the residential uses, I believe most of the traffic throughout the site will not be going through that area. If you could see from the plans, the delivery drivers as well as the trucks are going to come down Ortani Drive, and if it's a delivery semi truck, it's going to go directly to the loading bays, which are on the east side of 400 Ortani, and any delivery vehicles will be directed to to 200 Ortani as well as, and then the new paved area to allow that circulation from 200 directly to 400. I don't anticipate much use along. Yes.
One second. Can I ask that Mr. Desort put up his plan again, so that he can point to the areas that you're describing?
Yes, please.
Mr. Desort, did you hear me? Okay, thank you.
I did, yes. Can you guys see it now?
Yes. Yeah, so this area, like I said, I don't believe it's going to be used for much. It's not going to be used for the semi-access. It's not going to be used for the van access. I believe this will just be parking for, I imagine, employees and existing tenants of 400 Ortani, which is currently partially occupied by a separate tenant. Jeff, if you want to confirm or clarify.
Nope, that is correct.
That's what that was the question I was asking about there. That's also the place where I was talking about the vegetative barrier. Thank you.
As far as the signs, I know we went out there and we posted the signs throughout. We submitted the affidavit. Unfortunately, I didn't see the site, but we I assure you that the signs were posted.
I received an email with a copy of all the sign postings, photographs.
Well, I went through there yesterday and there was nothing.
Cheryl, I visited the site yesterday also and did not see any postings as the same as Mr. Mendel.
Cheryl, you said did they submit photographs of the signs being posted?
Yeah, I was just looking for them right now, but I can't find them. But I know I saw them. I received an email of photographs of all the postings.
And again, they were posted a week before the hearing.
That's when I asked them to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean someone else didn't take them down.
But yes, we did post a sign throughout the site. We posted a number of signs. It's a very large project, so the signs were there. We also sent out the notices to the 200-foot radius to all the property owners. So
I gave them 32 signs.
Any other questions, Mr. Mendel?
No more at this time. I'll reserve the right to ask after to hear from the public. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Andrews, any comments?
Yes, I have a couple of comments about the traffic. I read over the traffic impact study, and it says that the traffic is only going to increase by 2% over 2 years. Is that traffic, is that considered the vans and the tractor trailers that are going to be coming in and out of the facility?
yes, I believe that the traffic impact included all trips to and from the site. I can.
Now, how many vans are going to be included in this totally?
Jeff or Tarun, do you have that information available? I'm not sure if it's. Jeff, Tarun?
Dan, I don't have that information at hand with me right now. I would look to Jeff if he has those traffic numbers.
Yeah, so from here is the parking count I have on screen right now. So associate spaces proposed is 181 total. Van spaces total is 737.
737 vans?
Please note that the 737 vans, the 80 of those are interior to the 200 building, and the remainder of them are being parked in an existing parking facility in an existing parking lot.
But all of those vans will be going out to the community for deliveries?
I don't believe it all at one time, but I would like to reiterate that this application was before, for the use of the operations, was before the zoning board of appeals, and what we're proposing tonight as far as the grading on site and the canopy will not increase the amount of parking that was, or the amount of traffic that was reviewed and approved by the zoning board. But unfortunately, I do not have the numbers right here in front of me, but I will defer to the traffic impact study that was submitted and approved.
Yeah, 737 vans. How many tractor trailers?
I believe the estimate is roughly like 5 to 10 overnight, one an hour maybe. It's not,
So
not
one an hour.
number.
So 1 an hour, 5 to 10. Your 24-hour operation, 6 days a week, or 7 days a week?
7 days a week.
7 days a week. And all of this traffic is going to go out to 303. Am I correct?
That is the intention.
Because you're not going to use Western Highway.
Correct.
I kind of find it hard to believe that it's only going to be 2% increase over 2 years in traffic when you're telling me it's 737 vans coming in there. And then with the increase in internet buying and using Amazon, I kind of find it hard to believe that it's only going to be increased by 2% in 2 years. That's 1% per year. What is it going to be in 3 or 4 years?
Unfortunately, we don't have those numbers. Like I said, we did provide the traffic impact study. I'm not a traffic engineer, so I have to defer to Mr. Collins or Dr. Collins for that, which, he does conclude that the traffic in and around the site will not be significantly increased. And the 757, I believe that's just parking spaces. I don't know if technically the number of trips per day, and that's certainly not a indication of any number of trips at one time. That's just the number of parking spaces at the site.
Well, I understand with the concerns of the public, and you'll probably hear from them shortly. But I think you need to do a little bit more extensive traffic study on this. That's only my opinion. I don't know what the rest of the board will say or not, but I'd like to, I'll defer any more questions until after I hear from the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Mr. Sweeney?
Thank you. My comments are more global, not really particular to any one item. Just I was listening in the beginning, and Mr. Patrick was talking about the plan and talking about it being, unnecessary and a minimal impact to the area, fit the area, and most of the comments are very technical. I'm not sure I agree with that, especially because, Ms. Slavin's comments and Michael Bettman's both talked about how this canopy, if I would need a ZBA variance to be approved if it doesn't have sides, and its placement changes the emergency plan, and we haven't seen that revised emergency plan. So I know he said that he was very motivated to try to get final today, and I can't see any way that can possibly happen with so many things still up in the air, needing to go to ACA board, needing to go to ZBA, needing to come to he even said that the plan he thought that Michael Bettman was okay with, he came back today and said he's not okay with. So there really doesn't seem to even be an alternative emergency plan yet. So I just think we would need to see a lot more before I can be seeing this thing going to a final approval stage. Also, when it does come back, if it does come back, I would ask that on your maps. The vicinity maps are very, very small and hard to see any detail without driving to the site myself to see it. So I would ask that your next maps have a better vicinity of the location of the roads in and out, the emergency road, the gate, and the in and out entrances onto 303. That's my comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Mr. McCrory?
All right, thank you, Chairman. All right, obviously, this plan needs to come back just based on the fire inspector looking for a new fire department emergency access plan. There was talk of a new landscape plan. I received the landscape plan. I'm not sure if Mr. Mandel received it, but I do have a landscape plan. I don't know if Mr. Mandel doesn't think it's adequate, but I'm always good with, more buffering for the residential area. Makes for good neighbors, happy neighbors. Another comment regarding Mr. Andrews. It's you always see the traffic studies always seem to come back in favor of the client that's paying for it. So it's always you always got to take that with a grain of salt when they say traffic will not increase. And I realize we're just here for the canopy and grading, but I'd just like to ask, what was just to clear it up, what was granted by the zoning board?
That was the performance center review for the use or the continued occupant or the use of and occupancy of the building, because Amazon was becoming a new tenant after meeting with various town staff. It was indicated that in order for us to get a use permit and operate the facility as, we're demonstrating that was the necessary approvals required. And now with that use, we're proposing these changes to, increase safety and efficiency at the site for that use. So we could go and use the site right now for this facility, but physically we're restricted because of the approvals that we're seeking tonight.
All right, thanks.
So the trips are, yeah.
What's the hour of operations for the site?
I believe it's 24/7. Tarun, do you have any more detail on actual hours?
Mr. Chairman, the ZBA decision was included in the package. It's dated January 22nd, 2020, and the ZBA decision was in reference to performance standards, and it reviewed the traffic study.
Was there a variance granted for hours of operation? Jane, did they need that?
Yeah, they have 24-hour operation. It's on page 3 of 7.
Yeah, paragraph 2, Jamie Flynn.
Five to 10 tractor trailers will be arriving at night. 5 shifts of delivery for Sprinter vans, and they would start at 7 or 7:30 a.m. and return 10 hours later, no later than 8 p.m. They will be using the 7 loading docks and the drive-in door in phase 1 of 400 Oratani, and the 3 drive-in doors will be used at 200 Oratani. And those are the opposite side, I believe, of the residential view. If I can ask the engineer to point out where the loading docks are on 400 so that the board members can see that, please.
All right, thank you, Jane. Yeah, I was looking at that sentence too. That's why I was kind of confused. It's that.
Okay, so I want the board to see where the engineer pointed out the loading dock area. And then you can see to the southwest is where the residential properties are located, which is the opposite side of the building.
All right, can I continue?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Jane. All right, I was looking at that one sentence, and I just didn't clarify it. Sprinter vans would start from 7 or 7:30 and return in 10 hours later. However, that the revised delivery times may start at 10 and return no longer than 8. Was that an agreement to get the approval that you shifted those times between 10 a.m. and 8 p.m.?
I don't believe so. I believe that should be 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. So I'm sorry. No, I'm reading it incorrectly. The revised delivery times, those are for the Sprinter vans. Those will leave at 10 in the morning and come back by 8 o'clock at night. That does not include the semi trucks.
All right, and that was a condition you worked out with the board?
I don't think it was a condition. It was just the way that the operations were presented at that time, which is, as far as I understand, still correct.
Oh, so that's not a hard.
Dan,
That's somewhat like a gentleman's agreement, I guess.
Drew, you have something to clarify?
I can speak to that. I can speak to that. This is Tarun with Amazon, and over past few months, our efforts have been to minimize any peak hour traffic generations, which typically happens from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. And in order to avoid this traffic generation, we have basically changed our operating cycle, which means that now the vans are getting loaded around 10 a.m. and leaving around 10:20 to 10:30 a.m. And this operation of these vans leaving the site gets concluded by around 1:30 p.m. And then these vans basically come back after around 8 to 10 hours. And that way we are able to even avoid the PM rush hour for the vans returning back to the site. So basically what this operation does is to take away all that peak hour traffic away and puts it more during the non-peak hours so that we don't crowd the roads and these vans are not getting out of the site during peak hours. So that's what that is.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that's a good idea. That should be something that was we could put in writing as a condition, so that'll help out the neighborhood with the traffic and the noise. But those are my only comments for now. I'll wait to hear from the public. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McCrory. Mr. Dell, any comments?
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. First of all, when I'm looking at these drawings, they kind of remind me of preliminary concept plans rather than full construction details. Normally, we might be able to say, well, we could let this go, but for the amount of site activity here, I think more details are certainly needed. Now, you have contiguous residential properties, we know that. I would like to see the locations of the houses indicated on the site plan. And what's more important, I would like to see some line of sight drawings from the various areas of this which will be visible from the contiguous properties. And there's a reason for that, because we have four basic problems here. First is the air quality, the idling of the trucks, the vans, etc. That could be a problem for the people who are downwind of this place. Second, you have sound and noise levels. I would like to see some sort of research as to what possibly will be coming out of this and what type of ambient or continual noise the contiguous property owners will have to face. On the canopy, I want to know more about its height, and also a lot of that has to do with the lighting. In other words, are these residential homes going to feel like they're now next to the world's largest shopping center, or is it going to be muted? Next thing I have to say is just a general comment on this. I think this type of development should be in the middle of the site, not on the edges near residential properties. And I think also an independent traffic study should be done, and I won't feel comfortable moving it along until I have a lot more details, because right now it's like something you usually get in a preliminary consultation, not a final set of documents. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Dell. Mr. Bond, any comments?
All right, so they have the use variance from the ZBA already, right? So they can go in there and they could.
It wasn't a use variance. They went for performance standards.
Performance standards, okay.
Right. So a new company came in.
Right.
Right. So Amazon was proposing a use in the existing buildings. So they went to the zoning board for performance standards, which is a standard practice within our code for all commercial type applications of this sort. They would go for performance standards. They received approval based on the traffic study that was submitted.
Okay, so they could go in there. The only reason they're before us is for the awnings, basically.
That's correct. The use permit has been issued, and they are also obtaining permits for some interior work that needs to be done to accommodate their interior work, and they received approval for some minor exterior changes from Akabor for some closing up some loading dock doors and doing some man doors and some exterior changes that didn't require planning board.
Okay, so if they weren't putting up the awnings, they could go in there tomorrow, is basically what you're saying? They wouldn't be before us, correct?
That's correct. They're here because they're proposing changes that affect the site.
Okay, but that has nothing to do with the 700 vans or the amount of tractor trailers, because they already got the performance from the ZBA on that, the performance, or not the performance, the use from.
Right. I mean, if they were not doing any physical changes at all, they could move in tomorrow and begin their operations.
All right. No, I'm okay. They're going out to 303. 303 can, especially if they're going on non-peak hours, it can handle the amount of traffic. There's a light there. If they go left, they go up to the thruway. It's definitely doable. So I'm not as overly concerned about as some of the other members are. So okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Mr. Warren, any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is Jane speaking for Mr. Warren. He would just like to know if Amazon would be considering at any time in the future a rail siding type system for their operation.
I'm not sure I completely understand what, maybe Jeff can better answer that question.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question either. Rail siding?
Right, so there's a rail line there, and rail siding is used for bringing storage cars off and on the rail line. So a lot of times rail cars are stored in a non-active rail line that sits on the property. They're stored with goods, and then every so often they are loaded onto the rail line and then taken away or delivered. So Mr. Warren would like to know if that is something that Amazon has ever considered.
I do not believe that's something they're considering right now.
I can confirm that. Yeah, I can confirm that we have never, we've not considered that, and especially for this site, there are no plans for any of that.
I don't think rail can.
Okay. I think that's it, Mr. Warren. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Thank you, Ms. Slavin. I guess we will open this up to the public.
I'll ask the applicant to take down his presentation so I can see the full screen, please. Thank you.
Again, we're going to open this up to the public, and we're going to try and limit you to 3 minutes apiece. Anybody from the public like to speak to this project?
Yeah, this is Tim Takala at 5 Piper Court. I would like to ask a question regarding the study that was done. It was done in 2019, and now that we're living in a new world with COVID and the increase of packages that seem to be flowing, I don't believe that the study could be valid at only 2% increase in traffic. I'd also like to make another point that all of the packages that get delivered today, I've never seen an Amazon van delivered down our street. It's always USPS, UPS, or FedEx. So I don't know if what they're doing is getting ready to ramp up with their vans and all of the traffic is going to be new, or whether they currently use other avenues for different sections and they don't plan to increase. So it just doesn't make any sense based on the 2019 numbers and what we're seeing today.
Okay. Anything else? We'll have the applicant to answer the questions after the public portion is closed.
And this is Seth Yaski, also on Piper Court. I want to just circle back with regards to The proposal states specifically deliveries will be executed by Sprinter vans. We've addressed the concern about traffic. I also do have that concern myself with the number of employees. If there's 700 vans coming in, there's probably close to 700 or more employees coming in as well. So that number just is amplified by that amount. On top of that, because it states they will be delivered by Sprinter vans, has there, more question for the board, if in the future Amazon does shift to more of a drone or aerial based delivery system, which is in their plans, what is the process they need to go to, and is that something we can address now?
Did you say drones?
Drones as in aerial, boxes being delivered via miniature helicopters.
Okay, we'll have the applicant approach that when
We
we're
would have
done
to get
with.
another use variance to do that, right? Or performance standards, they would have to come back in for all that.
That's
right?
correct. That's uncharted territory. It's uncharted territory at this point, and that is not in any of their documentation that they have presented, whether previously to the zoning board or as part of the planning board package. And
So if they choose to come in for that, they'd have to approach and reapply. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Yeah.
That is correct. If they choose to propose expanding their operations in any way like that, they would have to go back for performance standards review and approval. And Mr. Chairman, before you open up to any other members, I would just like to remind you that Mrs. Burke was one of the first people to ask to speak. I don't want to miss her. She seems to not be able to click on. So when we're ready, I'll invite her to speak.
Why don't we do it now?
I don't know how to click on. I live on Western Highway, which is basically right in front of where the proposed plant is. And I have concerns about traffic, and I agree with everybody that's spoken that there's absolutely no way there's not going to be traffic. Aside from that, if there's tractor trailers and vans going in and out of there all night, we're going to have noise backing up during the beep, beep, beep all night long. Traffic travels in that valley. We're between two hills, and the noise from the train and everything just goes down into the valley. So it just amplifies. I mean, is there any thought about how that's going to be handled?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, all questions will be addressed at the end of the public comment.
Yes, Mr. Slavin, they will. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak to this?
This is Carolyn Hill. I would like to speak.
Yes, Ms. Hill.
Can you hear
go ahead.
me? Okay,
Yes.
thanks so much. I don't know how I missed letters and notifications, but I honestly heard about this today also from a neighbor. I live at 849 Western Highway, and regarding, I had three issues really. Regarding traffic, of course, I do appreciate that the plan and the proposal is that no trucks or vans will use Western Highway, but I can tell you from 12 years of living here that the plan or proposal or even law does not equal reality. It's supposed to be a 30-mile-an-hour speed zone. That is not adhered to. There are no left turn signs out of some of these businesses down on this end of Western Highway that trucks are not supposed to be turning left to go south on Western Highway. That still happens. And many of us who are residents here recently in the last few months have addressed our concerns about the chronic issues with traffic with the town board, the police department, and the traffic advisory board. And they've all been very receptive to hearing our concerns. However, we've learned that there is no traffic unit in the police department currently. So there are just honestly not enough officers to enforce traffic laws to keep us safe on the road. So regarding your gate, I'm very interested to hear more about the gate and what constitutes an emergency for people at Amazon using the entrance off of Western Highway. If it's gated and locked and I was an emergency vehicle, I would have a hard time thinking that I would need to get out and unlock a gate. And then what happens if these proposals and laws are not followed? Because as it exists today, we are honestly, truly on our own. When we are out on the roads, we hold signs that say, please slow down. I mean, it's kind of crazy. My second question is regarding the noise. I will just add my concern that from 11 p.m. to 8 a.m. unloading big trucks, I don't know how that's not going to be noisy. My last issue or question is regarding the drainage that you mentioned into an existing pond. I wasn't quite following that. I'm not sure what you're referring to in terms of an existing pond, but my family, I know, chose to live here on Western Highway because of the natural wetlands. One of our neighbors mentioned earlier on this call that we do have a conservation project here. We're a nonprofit organization with a community project that is supported from both our towns and our county. So my question would be regarding the landscaping and the drainage. Are you consulting with conservation-minded landscapers, and how do you plan to work in collaboration with conservation-minded residents and businesses? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Would anybody else like to speak to this project?
Yes, this is Vanessa Lappins at 659 Western Highway.
Good evening.
Can I go ahead?
Yes.
First, I'd like to say that I'd like to applaud the board for posting all the materials online, and that when you return to an in-person meeting schedule, that everyone realizes that having the materials available virtually increases awareness and participation, resulting in a more democratic process. I'd also like to say that the left hand, right hand of the different boards, very confusing. I don't know how you guys keep track of it, but the public can't keep track of it at all. And so asking what the zoning board said, if you go back and read the minutes, there's about 1 billion conditions. And so Amazon's assertion that everything is kosher and everything's approved is not accurate. I'd like to say that the traffic study appears to be completely made up, back to the 2% comment. There are typographical errors referring to Western Avenue. The increase in volume, is patently ridiculous. And then finally, there's no appendixes included, so we can't see the data for ourselves. When we look at the amount of additional emissions coming into the air, there has to be a tipping point with all of these different projects being put on the boards and approved. Maybe Amazon will agree to use only electric vehicles to cut down on emissions in the area. And I think we need it codified that they cannot use Western Highway for traffic. But that brings all of those issues back with regards to the gate and the lock, and that just seems kind of silly. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to this project? Yes, Ms. McNeil.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I really appreciate with what Ms. Lappins just said. And I would like to second that I'm really concerned about the air quality. I live at 56 Old Western, which connects directly with Western. We're probably about 1 mile to 1.5 miles away from the Amazon proposed site. But, pollution travels. There are no real barriers. It's all subject to the winds, and we get already a good amount of pollution in this area from the Aloof factory. So when we're talking about the total impact of the businesses in Orangetown, adding this huge business, I'm really disturbed, actually. I was not that opposed to this when I got on this meeting, and now when I'm seeing the plans and listening to everyone speak and hearing just exactly how large an operation this is, it's rather disturbing. And I'd like to know, what is the air quality impact going to be, and how is it going to be measured? How is it going to be monitored, and how are limits going to be enforced? And just as an overall, this is the last thing I'd like to say, that I'm kind of disturbed by the process here, because again, you know, I know some people who are living 2 houses away from where this site enters from Western Highway, and they were not aware of this project until tonight. So where were all of these sign postings about this project? Where was the dissemination of the information from the zoning board meetings? I mean, the residents of this town, I don't think people know about this. And from what I'm hearing from all of you dedicated board members, I'm feeling like hasn't been enough dissemination amongst you all either. And so it's just a process question, like what's going on here and how has this been approved without the public really understanding the impact, and actually this board having so many questions yourselves. So I applaud the fact that you're dealing with this, and I hope that you will follow up on all of these many issues, even though, you know, apparently we're really only supposed to be talking about the canopy tonight, but obviously there are so many questions about impact that really do need to be addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this project? Going once, going twice. I move to close the public portion.
Motion to close public portion, Mr. Mandel.
Mr. Mandel.
I'll second that.
Mr. Andrews seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Responses?
Patrick, you gonna respond to these questions?
Yeah, I would like to, a few general responses. First of all, we understand the concerns with traffic, but we would like to reiterate that this application and the use and Amazon's occupancy and use of this site has been approved, and that includes the approval of the traffic study and the traffic counts. And we are confident that our traffic counts are accurate. They're provided by a signed and sealed engineer. We would really just like to reiterate to this board that the operations here are not being proposed to change. What's been approved is still going to be what's going to happen. The only thing we're seeking tonight is approval for the site work specific to the physical changes that we're proposing, which will not change the operations or the amount of traffic that's already approved. The zoning board approval performance center review considered noise, they considered emissions and air quality, and those two were included in their approval of the performance center review, which was the approval of Amazon's use and occupancy. So those matters were considered, they were evaluated by the zoning board, and the application and use was permitted. That zoning board of appeals hearing was duly noticed, signs were posted, the 200-foot radius was mailed to, as well as it was posted in the newspaper. So we'd really like to reiterate for this board that the use and the certain aspects of this proposal that are becoming in most of the questions being raised tonight are questions regarding the specific use of the occupancy, which, as we've iterated, has been approved. As far as the emergency access, I think, if it's okay with the fire inspection and the fire chief, we would certainly include a Knox box. I know it's something standard done by, the fire chief, the fire department is aware of these boxes, and these are shown on the plans. And if it's approved by them, we will include one. We don't want to propose anything at this moment without first consulting with them and confirming with them. So we should be able to address that. And like I said, Amazon is not proposing to use Western Highway for its operations. Any use by emergency vehicles would be strictly for emergency vehicles, not by Amazon's employees. So it would be the fire department, police department, EMTs, etc. So it's now being open for emergency use whenever Amazon says it's emergency. It's being proposed for emergency use as it has been, strictly for emergency vehicles. The drainage question, I can refer, or I'll defer to Jeff if he has more detail, but I believe the pond that he was referring to was the existing drainage pond, as a detention pond, which is it's designed for mitigating stormwater runoff and for accepting stormwater runoff. And I'm not aware of any protected species in there. We've received several correspondences from the state concluding, or one correspondence from the state concluding that there's no protected species at the site. I don't know if Jeff has anything further to add on that end, but like I said, we really like to reiterate for this board that what's being proposed is strictly physical, and those physical aspects will not change the operations from what's been proposed and what's been approved so far.
Dan, I'll just jump in for the drainage question for the detention pond. You are correct. So our proposed drainage would be flowing to a new infiltration basin. From that infiltration basin, it will be going to an existing drainage facility that is already in operation for the 400 and 200 properties. All existing drainage patterns would be maintained.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Dan, I would like to speak a little bit more about the question regarding the 2% increase that was brought up earlier in traffic. The thing that I want to point out is that these facilities are designed for a certain capacity. There is only so many boxes that can be put out from this facility, and the 2% increase that you see is basically saying that we will make our operation more efficient by 2% every year to get that 2% increase in the volume. That's got nothing to do with how much extra demand we will get. It is just our assumption as to how much better we can make our operation from an internal improvement perspective. So that's where that 2% number plays, and just to clarify that point for the board to consider.
Okay.
Thanks,
Jeff.
Mr. Chairman, I can also answer the question regarding the locked gates. That is standard practice, and the fire departments have keys to these boxes. There's many sites throughout town that are set up this way. The Chase Bank is one of them. Henry Kaufman Campgrounds. There's many sites of the larger sites that have an emergency access that is meant for strictly that, and it's standard practice.
Okay.
Jane, do we have a problem with the access now? It's an emergency access now. I never heard about there being a problem, people coming in and out.
So, well, I wasn't aware of it either. And as far as traffic on a public roadway, we don't have any jurisdiction over that. That is the police department. However, if they're misusing the fire access road that is part of private property, neighbors could file a complaint with code enforcement. And if it's determined and observed that they're in violation of their approval, it's a site plan approval issue, and we can write a violation for that. But as far as public roadways, we cannot control traffic. That's not part of the building department's purview. That access road has been there. There's no change to the major part of the access road. What Mr. Bettman is referencing is once you enter the site between the two buildings, the fire trucks now would drive underneath where the proposed canopy is going to get to the other building. And the reason that happens is because of the railroad. So if the railroad is stuck, they can't get there from 303. So that is why that access road is there. For all the buildings on the west side of the railroad, they can get to them from Western Highway in an emergency. If they put the canopy up, Mr. Bettman's concern is they're going to block the access. So they have been working back and forth with the engineers and Dan Patrick to figure out another way. And I did read Mr. Bettman's email. He did say, thank you for the plan, but he has an idea that may be a better solution. So they need to review that. So it's actually it's fire truck access within the site. And they can regrade and do that stuff to get around that. It's not the access road that the neighbors are referencing. It's once you're inside the gate.
Thank you. And yes, correct. We are working closely with Mr. Bettman, and we will continue to do so. And we'd be certainly willing to accept any condition of approval by Mr. Bettman as far as fire access. And we believe the site can currently accommodate the adequate access as we're showing.
Mr. Chairman, if I can say a few words.
Yes, Mr. Sweeney, go ahead.
Sure. Just, I'm not a big fan of repeating things that are already said, but I think in this case, it does bear repeating. I think Ms. McNeil kind of reflected it very well. We had a lot of questions to this applicant because traditionally when a new plan comes, it comes to us first, and then it goes to the ZBA. But in this case, it's a bit different because it was an existing building. It's just a new tenant. So all he needed was performance standards, not a new site plan. So we didn't have any comments, the opportunity to comment on the traffic study or some other things that are being questioned because that was done by the zoning board and not through this board. So, we're at the point now where really we're weighing in on a canopy, and then the things that happen because of the canopy being maybe the emergency access to a certain building or some curbing or some landscaping. So I guess whether we like it or not, correct me if I'm wrong, Rich or Jane, all we can really do is weigh in on the canopy and the related items, not the traffic, not the pollution, not some of the other things that are being brought up, unfortunately. And I think Bruce Bond asked the question earlier, if they decide not to do the canopy, this would come off the docket and they would just operate based upon the approvals they received already. Is that correct?
That is correct, but yes, we need the proposed improvements for the operation of the site. They're essential to the
No, I get that.
the actual operation. But correct, we could conceivably go in today with the approvals that we already have and generate the amount of parking that's being proposed, and generate the amount of traffic, generate all of the other concerns that are being raised. Those could all potentially, those conditions have been approved. Those could exist tomorrow with the approvals we have.
At least where I was going, where that we can ask a lot of questions, we can make a lot of suggestions and try to get some of these things addressed in our approval of the canopy. But when it comes down to it, we're approving the canopy and the things related to that. That's my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman? Yes, I have a
Yes.
review on that. I believe that we're a planning board. We're there to protect the community. The canopy itself, yes, that's one of the things we're looking at, but the canopy does not just exist as one little canopy. It's part of an overall project. And I feel what's going on here with the amount of work the amount of traffic that's coming in, the amount of noise, etc., we should be giving this a much harder look than we are doing at this time. And I feel this may come back to bite us, so to speak, because I don't know if we're really doing due diligence that a planning board should, and that we're looking at this not just in terms of the canopy, do we like it or not, but the overall safety of the community and the nature of the community and the planning of the community, which is why I believe we're here. Thank you. Mr. McCullough, do you have any comments on that?
I think Mr. Dell, your comment and Mr. Sweeney's comments are both well taken. I think the problem here is the planning board is the board that usually is the one that deals with traffic studies and things like that. It's very frustrating because this board probably has perhaps more expertise than the ZBA. And the problem I think we have is that you want to comment on that aspect of the case, which has been decided upon by the ZBA. That being said, this board does have some inherent authority to make sure that the overall plan is acceptable and that everything's looked into. That being said, it's a fine line For example, there's been some discussion as perhaps having another traffic study. Would that be appropriate? I'm not sure. The ZBA has made that determination. I don't know that this board can make that determination. It's already been decided. That may lead to a lawsuit. So it's a fine line. That's not saying that this board can't ask for more. And it's, maybe it's appropriate to pull the board to see if there's enough to get a vote today, or if you may ask for a continuance and then tell the applicant what would make you happy or what other things you would like to see at the next meeting. I'm not sure. I've heard various things that there may be enough to get a vote today, maybe not. So maybe taking a straw poll, and if there's not enough to get a vote, then the applicant knows that and can ask for a continuance, and the board can tell the applicant what it would like to see for the next meeting that perhaps would make it possible for them to vote.
I agree with you, Rick. That's a good recommendation. I'll just tell you this, the use of this site has not changed. The intensity of it is what's been in question. But like Mr. Sweeney said, we're looking to approve the canopy here. That's what they came for. The applicant's been upfront with everything. The emergency road behind the facility, it's going to be locked up. We understand that, but the intensity of this use is what's being identified and not the canopy, which is what the applicant came here for. So if it were up to me, I would grant them preliminary tonight, but I want to hear what the other board members have to say, including Mr. Bond. Mr.
Chairman,
Mandel?
I'll make a comment.
Go ahead, Michael.
All right, thank you. Hearing from the neighbors, there seems to be concern about being aware of this meeting. And it makes me wonder if they had problems finding out about the zoning board meeting that was January 22nd, 2020, because all these concerns they had could have been brought forth at that meeting, obviously. And when you look at the ZBA, what happened at the meeting, there was only one public comment. So it makes you wonder if there was a problem with the community learning about that meeting, because they voiced that they had problems learning about this meeting, and we had 6 or 7 with emails voicing their concerns, but at the ZBA meeting, they were not able to voice their concerns, or they were unaware of this meeting. So I have concerns about that, and I do understand we're here for the canopy, but I feel like we have an overall duty to make sure this is done right and to protect the neighbors. So that's my further comment. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Michael Mann.
So you would allow them to do what?
Oh,
Mr. McCrory, you would allow them to do what? Come back, or you would approve?
Well, they would have to come back just based on the fire chief's letter alone about the canopy and the request for a new landscaping plan, better buffering. So I would have them come back, yes.
Okay, Mr. Mandel?
okay. Just based upon what I can see, when I look at the ZBA decision, page 5, paragraph down, number 8, the applicant shall submit a planting plan, which means a specific plan for the southwest corner of 400 Orangetown that includes evergreen plantings 200 feet to the south and 200 feet to the west. The maintenance plan to ensure that the neighboring properties remain shielded from the activity at 400. So we need a full and complete landscaping plan. That means the type of trees that are there, the trees that are going to be planted. As I said, I walked through the trees. I got out of the car, I walked through the tree, and it was a tree.
Mr. Mandel,
Yes.
if I can just interject, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
That's okay.
a plan was submitted to the ZBA based on their comments for the required screening and stamped. So that was done, that they did meet that requirement. I believe Cheryl did include a copy of that.
Yes, I gave you the stamp plan.
I saw a landscaping plan that we never would have passed, period, from here. I don't know how it got through in the first place. It doesn't tell us the type of trees, it doesn't tell us the size. There are openings as you go along, especially at the location when you get to where the trucks are going to be coming in and out of, between 200 and 400. As you go along the fence there, you can walk through. I could walk through without pushing branches away. So that's something I'd like to see, a full landscaping plan. Even Brooker says they'd like to see full-size plans. That's number one. We need a lighting plan. I don't see a lighting plan. Or is there one that we can take a look at that complies with what they're looking at? Number three, I want to see a Knox box on the emergency exit. We all know that, yes, we don't want them driving through there, but to go on Mr. McCrory's statement, we must be aware of the neighborhood. We must be aware as advocates, not only for the rights of the applicant, but as an advocate for the people who live in the area. And lastly, it's the fire department's statements about the emergency access. I have no problems with them building a canopy as long as it complies with the fire department emergency access and that they put in fire suppression or whatever that the fire department wants. But we have to see a complete plan that shows that. Not we're going to discuss it. And that I would say I would like them to come back with those items that I just mentioned. I mean, ZBA might have approved some sort of landscaping plan, but it's not a landscaping plan that you go along the whole fence. They might have just done that. And I took a look over there. I don't see the full thing protecting all the homes as you go along there, because I could walk through and see houses there. In fact, I went around the block to Sergeant DiMiola Drive so that I could take a look from there and see through the branches from that side. So that's where I stand at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mendel. Mr. Dell.
Yes, sir. I think I expressed my opinion. I think you should have at least line of sight drawings to the canopy. There's so many unanswered questions. As I said, this is almost like a consultation rather than a submission. And I think as a planning board, we have to do our due diligence. And if we push this through tonight, my personal opinion is that we will not have done that, sir. So they should at least come back and ask for a continuation to give us something to get an idea of what's happening. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you. Yeah, like we've all been saying, this is a proposal for a canopy plan, and while the comments from the experts do relate to the canopy proposal, I look at all the documents submitted by the applicant and the maps we got, the drawings, and only one drawing that I can see, A1.16, even shows the canopy. And without the emergency plan from the fire inspector, without the talk, the drawing of the fire suppression system, without knowing about a zoning board of appeal variance possibly because it's too close to the plot line possibly, I don't see any way we could act on a canopy plan that isn't complete.
I'll be clear, there's not a bulk requirement. If there was, I would have put it in my comments. I'm not sure why Mr. Bettman made that comment. It's confusing. It's confusing the way that Bradley Parkway is broken up into its own little lots. The lot cuts through the center of the buildings in some cases, so it's very confusing.
Got it. That was my comment.
I don't know.
I think Mr.
Chairman
Young
is
disappeared. He just disappeared. Any other board members need to comment?
Yeah, I mean,
if I can.
All right, go ahead. I'll wait.
No, please. Sorry, let me interrupt. Well,
I mean, they definitely need to iron out the fire with the fire commissioner, the warning, in terms of how their fire trucks are going to get in and out of there, if that's a cut through now. So I would say they're probably better off asking for a continuance. As far as the landscaping plan, there probably is some improvements they could make there, but they're not responsible for the entire site. So, I don't know where, on some of the roads that it borders, whether even is their responsibility to make the landscaping better there. It's a gigantic complex. So, but I'm sure there are some areas where they probably could improve the landscaping. So, I would think they would have to come back, but I'm not in favor of. I don't think we have the right to ask them for another traffic study. I've never seen a traffic study that hasn't come back good. So, in all the years I've been doing this, regardless of what the project is. So.
Okay. I'm sorry, I faded out there with the internet. Mr. Patrick.
Yes. So what I just would
hearing-
like to represent that. You hear me? Okay. I would just like to represent that Amazon is certainly willing to improve the landscaping around the site if that would help appease and help move this process along. We'd certainly be willing to accommodate any sort of landscaping improvements. As far as the lighting plan, it would be a condition, I believe, as in one of the comment memos that we submit a lighting plan showing that the foot candles that the property lines are 0.1 all around. So we anticipate submitting that anyway. Like I said earlier, we're really hoping to keep moving things along and begin operation as soon as possible. So any consideration that this board can give to conditions, rather than holding it over and having us come back, we would certainly appreciate. We would certainly seek. I understand. I don't want to push this board one way or the other. But we would certainly, we would appreciate any consideration for, including conditions rather than requiring us to come back.
You're not going to get approval right now.
Understood.
I would recommend asking for a continuance.
Yep. We will request a continuance. I would also, if there's any specific information or specific details as far as, the landscaping that we can show, we, certainly appreciate those comments now so we can address the board's comments rather than in one application rather than come back again.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Andrews. I have one question with the continuance. They would have to post the property again?
Yes, the property gets posted again. If they can determine which meeting they want to get onto tonight, then there will be no abutting property owner letters. But yes, the property will be posted. So if the applicant can decide when they want to come back.
I would respectfully request that we get placed on the next agenda, or this be held over until that date certain. And if, we will do our best to provide this board with the updated materials before then. Just for expediency, like I said, we would prefer to be, the date forward is going to be set if we request to be the next planning board meeting.
Well, the next one is next week, so I don't think that, right?
Yeah,
That's not possible.
There's a June 10th meeting.
That seems awful quick for a turnaround,
There's also a June 15th meeting.
Yeah, if the board remembers, we've added 2 extra meetings in June due to the backlog because of COVID closings. So we have a meeting every week in the month of June.
Again, I think we would request to be placed on the next available agenda. And we would also request if there's any specific details as far as landscaping or plantings, we would like that feedback from the board now so we can incorporate that in one revision as opposed to coming back with a guess.
Please include the line of sight drawings.
Regarding, Mr. Mandel here, sir, regarding what you're talking about with landscaping, if you go, we have all your, the starter, what are they, starter trucks? I'm sorry, I forgot the terminology, but your delivery trucks, they're gonna be between 200 and 400. You go straight down to the road that circles the two buildings there, you can see right there you need landscaping. I think if you have a landscaping architect come in, you could probably go right along, see the open spaces from the corner, the southwest corner is going north, making that turn and going probably northeast. Just along that whole thing where the residences are, you can see where there's missing places, where it's too thin, there's dead tree, or there's no trees at all. And I think that would solve what I'm looking for as far as landscaping. Appreciate your consideration on that, please.
And Mike, you also want to see a lighting plan?
Mr. Mandel, you muted yourself.
Oh, sorry. I'd like to see.
Right, you want to see a lighting plan also, correct?
Yeah, if necessary, the lighting plan, but I definitely want to see the results of the meeting with the fire department, exactly what's been decided on the emergency route so that we can see it drawn out there. That would be, I'm looking at the emergency access. So if that clarifies, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Can we please also see a nice detailed plan of the canopy, which was the main thing we were supposed to view? Thank you.
Cheryl, have you been able to hear all the comments clearly?
Yes.
I just want to inform the board that the chairman, his internet seems to be having some issues. So that's why you no longer see him. So both our chairmans are down for the count right now. Rick, is it okay if I just wrap this up since it's continued? Is that okay? Or do you want me to hand it over to another board member?
I think it has to be handed over. Who's the next senior person? Is it Mike? Mandel?
Mr. Mandel?
No, I think it might be Bob Dell or.
It's probably me, but I'm not voting tonight. Although I'm voting now that
I believe it is probably.
Well, there's no. Yeah,
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sir. Are you asking?
And also, Mr. Patrick, the next planning board meeting is 4 days away on Monday. Are you sure you're going to have all this ready on Monday?
Yeah, that's not going to happen. We have a full agenda. Cheryl and I will reach out to Mr. Patrick in the morning.
But if it's not announced now, then it has to be published and everything. So if he announces it now.
Well, it always is published, but it's just the abutting neighbor notices. So we'll do the abutting neighbor notices again because we can't decide on a meeting date tonight.
We'd be willing to adjourn this until, I believe you said, the June 10th meeting, but.
Right, because in all fairness, myself and Mr. Bettman and maybe some other consultants may have to review again. So we want to make sure that we have enough time. I know my comments I'm going to have to review again, so I want to make sure that 4 days is not enough.
Yeah, the next meeting is not. Doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
So what are you looking? What's it, June 10th and then what, June? What's the one?
June 10th.
June 10th and June 15th.
June 10th and June 15th, which would be better, Director Slateman, for everything? In your opinion?
Agreed. We lost Mr. Patrick.
Oh,
is he still there?
Oh, he's still here.
Okay, I don't see him.
Yeah. He moved.
Okay, there he is.
I'm here.
Which would be best, in your opinion, June 10th or June 15th?
For us, probably the 15th, but if the applicant is requesting the 10th, we'll make it work. But again, it's a week.
Okay, you asking for the 10th, Mr.?
Correct. I think we're gonna aim for the 10th.
Okay, so you're going to ask, you're asking for a continuance?
Yeah, you did already.
Bruce, are you asking for a continuance, sir?
Continuance until June 10th.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Okay, so now that we have a meeting date, we only have to post the property with the signs, and there will be no abutting neighbor notices.
We will post the signs.
And the agenda on the town website will be updated to include the Amazon project.
Yes.
Okay, any other matters we have to address, or can we close?
Decisions, May 13th decisions.
You have a motion on to pass the May 13th agenda for minutes or whatever. What do we have for the 13th? Cheryl, what are we voting on, the minutes?
What's that?
Yeah, what do we have?
Yeah,
for
the minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
The
You have a
minutes.
motion on the minutes for the 13th?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the 13th.
Mr. Sweeney,
I'll
second.
second that.
Mr. Andrews, seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Anything else, Cheryl?
Oh,
No, that's it.
Mr. Warren is putting his hand up. He must be texting something.
Hold on.
He's making a motion to adjourn.
He's making a motion to hold on. He has a comment. He must be contacting Jane. I know, we see you. We see you 1 minute.
On the submittal for the June 10th meeting, Chair wants full-size plans this time instead of reduced size.
We can do that.
Okay, thanks.
Unless you guys have anything else from us, thank you very much.
303
Appreciate you guys
project.
holding these meetings.
All right.
Thank
See you soon.
You're welcome.
Do you still asking any questions, Cheryl?
I don't know what Tom is saying.
He's talking to Jane.
Need somebody who can read lips.
No new taxes?
Mr. Warren is questioning the minutes from the 13th regarding the
Oh, yes.
the right turn only. He wants to make sure that that was overridden and that the board wants the ability for the trucks to turn right and left when exiting. Did you exiting onto 303? Did you get that, Cheryl?
I took that condition out. I just deleted it.
Okay. That's good.
Okay.
Right. Motion to adjourn?
I'll second that.
Need a motion. Mr. Andrews makes the motion. Do I have a second? Tom? Warren?
Warren, second.
Favor? Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah.